Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. I remember the day I first noticed something was wrong. I was standing in my living room, the late afternoon sun slicing through the blinds, just back from my final checkup with my physical therapist. My knee still felt stiff, but I was cleared to return to a normal work routine. One would think I'd be all smiles after a 5-month recovery, but there was this weird chill in the house, a hush that made the air feel heavier. My wife, Clarissa, stood at the kitchen sink, her shoulders tensed. She was rinsing dishes, though dinner wasn't for another hour. I caught a glimpse of her phone face down on the counter, the screen lighting up every few seconds, silent notifications. Something in me sank. We'd been married for 23 years, and I could read Clarissa like an open book. The expression on her face was closed off, preoccupied. Usually she'd spin around and give me a quick greeting, maybe tease me about wearing the same jacket for the 100th time. Today, she just mumbled a hello and kept scrubbing. I stepped closer, trying not to favor my knee too much. "Hey," I said gently. "You need any help?" She gave me the smallest shake of her head. Her tone was clipped when she answered, "No, I'm good. It's just been a long day at work." It was such a simple sentence, a long day at work, but the undercurrent of tension in her voice might as well have been a flash of lightning. I noticed then, for the first time, that she'd been coming home later over the past few weeks. At first, I assumed she was picking up extra projects to help with our finances while I was out on reduced pay. But something about the secrecy in her posture made me uneasy. The hush in the kitchen was broken by Oliver, our 17-year-old, who came bounding down the stairs with the grace of a gazelle. "Mom, are we still doing dinner at 6? I've got a study group at 7. He looked at me, eyes bright, and tossed a grin. "Dad, good to see you home early. How's the knee?" "It's coming along," I said, returning his smile. "We'll see how it holds up when I'm back on my feet all day at the office." Oliver turned to Clarissa, who offered him a faint smile. "Dinner'll be ready," she said, but her voice was miles away. Oliver blinked, probably picking up on the strange mood himself. He gave a little shrug and headed back upstairs, muttering something about homework. I rubbed at the back of my neck. "You sure everything's okay?" I asked Clarissa quietly. She didn't look at me, just nodded. An hour later, we gathered around the table. The meal was a simple chicken stir-fry, though Clarissa ate sparingly, pushing broccoli around her plate more than she actually consumed it. I tried to fill the silence with talk about returning to work. My boss had been flexible, letting me do partial remote tasks. Still, Clarissa offered minimal responses. She seemed fixated on the clock. Partway through dinner, our older son Dylan came over with his girlfriend Sabrina. Dylan was 22, living across town in a modest apartment. He liked popping in to check on me during my recovery. They arrived in good spirits, Sabrina carrying fresh bread from a local bakery. But as soon as they stepped in, they sensed the awkwardness. Dylan shot me a questioning look as he pulled me aside. "Everything good here, Dad? Mom's kinda not herself." He was always quick to read a room, one of his strengths. I shrugged, exhaling softly. "I'm not sure. She's been quiet, distant, maybe stressed from work." He frowned, drumming his fingers on the stair banister. "You know, Mom. She usually tells you when something's bugging her." "I know," I said, glancing back at Clarissa, who was talking politely with Sabrina. That's the weird part. Despite the tension, we managed to get through dinner, mostly because Dylan and Sabrina held up the conversation. I tried to catch Clarissa's eye a few times, but she made a point of focusing on Sabrina's chatter or clearing the table. By the end of the evening, I felt a dull ache in my chest, not unlike the throbbing in my knee. After Dylan and Sabrina left, Oliver slipped away to his room, and I was alone with Clarissa in the dimly lit living room. Our cat Winston purred on the couch, a small comfort in the middle of this emotional storm. Clarissa was gathering her purse and phone. She glanced at me, the overhead lamp casting shadows across her face. "I've got some work emails to send," she murmured. "I'll be upstairs." There was a finality in her words that stung. We used to talk about our days, about our stress, We used to watch silly shows together and laugh. Now it felt like she'd erected a wall between us, something thick and impenetrable. "Sure," I whispered. I watched her go, noticing she clutched her phone so tightly her knuckles were white. She disappeared up the steps, and I sank onto the couch. Winston meowed softly, nudging his head against my hand. As I stroked his fur, I stared at the dark TV screen. What on earth had happened to our marriage in just a few weeks? That night, after dragging my stiff leg upstairs, I found Clarissa already asleep, or at least pretending to be on her side of the bed. Her back was turned to me, and the shape of her figure in the glow of the bedside lamp felt foreign. She used to wait up, greet me with a wry smile or a comment on my slow progress on the stairs. Now it was as if she couldn't stand to face me. I settled under the sheets, trying not to jostle her, but the sense of isolation gnawed at my insides. I found myself staring at the swirling patterns on the ceiling, replaying the moment I came home earlier that day, the awkward dinner, that persistent feeling I was missing something right in front of my eyes. In the hushed darkness, I vowed to figure out what had changed in my household, in my wife's eyes, in our whole dynamic. The question tore through me. Am I just being paranoid? I almost hoped that was the case, because the alternative that Clarissa was harboring secrets was infinitely more terrifying. Winston hopped on the bed, curling up near Clarissa's feet. For a fleeting second, I envied that cat's simple existence. My knee throbbed in dull pulses, reminding me of its slow healing. I inhaled, trying to center my thoughts, but the air felt stale, as if weighed down by suspicion. I wanted to believe we'd come through a rough patch, that maybe the strain was just exhaustion, or perhaps a misunderstanding. But as the clock hit midnight and I drifted into a restless sleep, the pit in my stomach only grew deeper. The morning after that unsettling dinner, my knee cracked ominously as I stretched out of bed. Clarissa was already gone, apparently left early for work. If that was even true, I thought darkly. I tried to shake off my cynicism. This was my wife, the woman who stood by me during my surgery and recovery, who had always been my biggest cheerleader. Doubt was a disease, though, and it spreads fast once it takes root. Downstairs, Oliver was hurrying through a bowl of cereal. He gave me a quick nod, then glanced around warily. Mom left an hour ago. Said she had an important meeting. He paused, tapping his spoon against the table. She hasn't been around much, Dad. Last night she barely spoke. I forced a thin smile, ruffling his hair. I know, buddy. She's under a lot of pressure. That was the only explanation I could muster without betraying my growing suspicions. Oliver accepted the explanation with a mild shrug, but I saw worry flicker across his face. When I got to work, I was greeted by a stack of pending files. My manager, Patrice, gave me a sympathetic grin. "Welcome back to the daily grind, Logan. How's the knee?" "Better," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "Glad to be on my feet again." But my mind was half-focused on Clarissa. The phone calls, her tense posture, that fleeting feeling that she was slipping away. By lunch, I couldn't concentrate on the budget reports in front of me. Clarissa hadn't returned my morning text, which was unusual. Even on her busiest days, she'd fire back a quick "all good" or "call you later." This radio silence made my nerves hum like a live wire. That evening, I mustered the courage to ask her directly, "Are you all right?" We were in the living room, separated by an entire sofa. She was typing something on her phone, still wearing her work blazer as if she didn't intend to stay home long. The late autumn sky outside was a steel gray, matching the mood in the room. She looked up, blinking as though I'd snapped her out of a dream. "Huh?" I cleared my throat. "I'm worried about you. You've been quieter than usual, coming home late. Is something happening at work?" Clarissa pressed her lips together in a thin line. For a moment, I thought I glimpsed genuine conflict in her eyes, like she couldn't decide how honest to be. Then she released a sigh, setting her phone aside. "Work is stressful," she said carefully. "Deadlines, difficult clients, that sort of thing. You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under." That caught me off guard. We'd always been a team, sharing our individual burdens. Before I could push further, she got to her feet. "I'm exhausted," she muttered. "I might just head to bed." "But it's only 7:30, I said, feeling a churn of frustration in my gut. She ignored me, retreating upstairs. As her footsteps faded, I rubbed my hand over my face, a low-level anger pulsing under my skin. Maybe I didn't understand her corporate environment, but in the past, she'd always confide in me about coworker drama or big projects. Why the secrecy now? Oliver arrived home from a friend's place later that night, complaining that dinner was missing. "Where's Mom?" he asked, rummaging through the fridge for leftovers. "Upstairs," I answered softly, not wanting to call it hiding. "I think she's asleep." He closed the fridge door, a worried furrow on his brow. "Dad, is everything okay with you two?" His voice wavered on that last word, revealing his fear that our family was crumbling. I tried to reassure him, but the words tasted hollow in my mouth. "We're just going through a rough patch." Oliver gave a slight nod, though he didn't look convinced. The next day, an accidental discovery added fuel to the fire. I was sorting through the mail when I came across Clarissa's phone bill. Normally, we handled those bills together, but because of my injury, she'd been doing most of the household management. I slid it open without overthinking, just verifying the charges. The itemized list showed repeated calls to one unfamiliar number, often late in the evening. I felt my pulse quicken. Could be a coworker, I told myself. But I'd never heard Clarissa mention any new colleague by name, never seen a number she needed to dial so religiously. And it didn't explain the pattern these calls ranged from quick 2-minute bursts to long half-hour sessions. My phone buzzed on the table, a text from my sister Cassandra. She was asking how my knee was, if I needed help with anything. I typed back a polite response, but my mind was spinning with possibilities. After a moment's hesitation, I called Reggie, my oldest friend who happened to be a bit tech-savvy. If anyone could help me figure out who that number belonged to, it was him. Reggie answered on the second ring, jovial as ever. "Hey man, you still limping, or are you back to karate-chopping your way around the office?" "Something like that," I mumbled. My voice sounded strained even to my own ears. "I need a small favor, Reg. There's a phone number that keeps popping up on Clarissa's bills. I need to know who it belongs to, or at least any info you can get." He paused. "You sure, man? Sounds like you're stepping into dicey territory. You want me to do that?" I swallowed. "Yeah," I said, ignoring the uneasy swirl in my gut. "I just need to put my mind at ease." Reggie hesitated for another moment before agreeing. We hung up, and I set down my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. A part of me felt guilty, like I was violating Clarissa's privacy. But another part, a bigger part, insisted that something was off, and I deserved the truth. The guilt inside me flared again that evening when Clarissa arrived home around 8:30, murmuring about an unexpected client meeting that ran long. She tried to avoid eye contact, breezing past me in the foyer. I wondered if she could sense my suspicion. I mustered my calmest tone, forcing a smile. "Long day again?" She nodded, stepping out of her heels. "Yeah, sorry, I'm wiped out." There was no warmth in her voice, no invitation to chat. She headed to the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water, then disappeared upstairs. I stood there, alone in the dark hallway, feeling the edges of my stomach twist in doubt. Later, I overheard Oliver trying to talk to her about some fundraiser at school. Her answers were short, half-hearted. She shut her bedroom door soon after. Oliver, passing by me in the hallway, gave me this pained look like he was caught in the middle of a conflict he had no hand in creating. Midnight found me restlessly flipping channels on the TV, Winston curled on my lap. The phone bill with that suspicious number circled in red pen lay on the coffee table. I felt like I was living in someone else's house, someone else's marriage. When Clarissa and I first said "I do," I never imagined we'd reach a point where my heart would hammer at the sight of her phone records. But here we were, shadows creeping in at the edges of my once familiar life. I set the remote down, gazing at the darkened staircase. Every step she took away from me felt permanent. 3 days passed with no real improvement in my conversations with Clarissa. If anything, the tension escalated, like a pot on the stove with the heat turned up too high. Oliver tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy: football practice, friends, occasional late-night gaming sessions. I encouraged him to enjoy his youth, not to dwell on the cold front between his parents. Then one Saturday morning, my sister Cassandra dropped by unannounced. She breezed through the door in a flurry of perfume and jingling car keys, calling out, "Anybody home? I brought bagels." She found me at the kitchen table, flipping mindlessly through last week's newspaper. I forced a smile and thanked her for the breakfast gesture. Cassandra had this penetrating gaze, and I knew she sensed trouble immediately. She set the bag of bagels on the table, then crossed her arms. "Okay, what's going on?" she asked in a low voice. "I'm your sister, Logan. You look like you haven't slept in days." I sighed, glancing around. Clarissa was out, said she had errands, which probably meant more work stuff. Oliver was busy mowing the lawn. "I don't want to jump to conclusions, CAs," I started, but my tone betrayed my worry. "I've noticed strange behavior from Clarissa. She's been distant, on her phone a lot, working late. There's a phone number that keeps popping up on the bill." Cassandra's brows creased. "And you haven't confronted her?" "Not directly. I tried, but she won't talk about it. She dismisses everything, says I wouldn't understand her job's pressure." Cassandra blew out a slow breath, then set a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Look, I hate to say it, but I've seen marriages fall apart over less. Don't bury your head in the sand. You owe it to yourself to find out what's going on. Don't let the doubt eat you alive." We talked in low voices for another half hour, discussing possibilities. Maybe it was an innocent coworker calling about urgent tasks. Maybe Clarissa felt overshadowed by my presence at home when I was injured. Cassandra reminded me that sometimes people act out because they feel unseen, but the weight in my chest refused to lift. My instincts told me Clarissa's changes weren't that simple. Eventually, Cassandra left with a promise to check in more often. I appreciated her concern, but felt vulnerable admitting my suspicions aloud. The moment the door closed behind her, I realized how lonely I'd become in my own home. That afternoon, I got a call from Reggie. His voice was subdued. "I've got some info for you, Logan," he said, clearing his throat. "That number belongs to a guy named Kieran Collins. I did a bit of cross-referencing. He works at Clarissa's firm. He's in a different department, but apparently they do some collaborative projects." I let his words sink in. "Kieran Collins," I repeated slowly, rolling the name around in my mind. Never heard Clarissa mention him. "Yeah, well, guess that's the thing. Look, man, I don't want to jump to worst-case scenarios, but the volume of calls is pretty high. I can't tell you how to feel, but I'd keep digging." My pulse throbbed in my temples. I thanked Reggie and hung up, collapsing into the living room recliner. Kieran. A man from her office. I pictured Clarissa's face each time I'd asked about her day, and she gave me half-lies or brush-offs. Is this it? Is my wife having an affair? The word affair felt too big, too final, yet it lingered in my mind. That evening, Marcus, another close friend, dropped by. Normally, Marcus was all jokes and high fives, but I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost. He frowned the second he laid eyes on me. "Dude, you good?" I let out a shaky breath. "I don't know, man. I think Clarissa's cheating on me. Or maybe I'm just paranoid." Marcus's face fell. "Cheating? Damn. Are you sure?" I shook my head. "No, yes. I mean, I found out about some coworker, Kieran Collins. She's calling him a lot. Coming home late. She barely looks me in the eye. I can't even remember the last time we laughed or had a real conversation." Marcus took a seat on the couch, leaning forward. "Listen, if your gut's telling you something's off, you're probably right. But you need proof. Confronting her with half-baked accusations might backfire." His words echoed Cassandra's advice. Don't bury your head, but don't blow up the marriage on a hunch either. So we brainstormed. Marcus, being a bit of a data geek, offered to help me compile phone records, times, and see if there were patterns like calls before or after certain staff meetings. It felt clandestine, shady even, but I couldn't ignore the prickle of dread any longer. A few days later, Clarissa cornered me in the hallway, an edge to her voice. "Have you been messing with the online phone records? I got a strange notification about password changes." My heart hammered. Marcus had tried to be careful, but maybe he triggered some security alert. I forced a casual shrug. "I checked the account once or twice. Wanted to see if we were getting overcharged." She narrowed her eyes, jaw tense. "Well, I've got it handled. Next time, ask me first." She spun on her heel and marched upstairs, leaving me with Winston swishing his tail at my feet. My mind spun. Clarissa obviously had something to hide, or at least, that's how it felt. If it really was just innocent calls, she would have calmly explained, right? That night, after Oliver went to bed, I roamed the house, restless. The world outside was still, but my heart was pounding from an internal storm. As I passed Clarissa's office door slightly ajar, I heard hushed talking. Leaning closer, I realized she was on a call. Her voice was low, intense. Every few words were muffled. My pulse soared. Part of me wanted to burst in and demand answers. Another part froze, terrified of confirming my worst fear. Something rustled. Then I heard her say, "Not tonight, he's suspicious." A pause. My stomach sank to the floor. She spoke again. "I know, but please just a few more days." Then she ended the call. I darted into the hall bathroom, panic surging. "He's suspicious." The phrase echoed in my skull like a gunshot. She knew I was onto her, and she was telling someone, likely Kieran, that they needed to be more careful. A wave of nausea hit me, forcing me to breathe deeply, grip the edge of the sink. I splashed water on my face, trying to steady my trembling hands. I was past the point of denial. This had gone from a vague suspicion to a near certainty. Clarissa was lying to me. The woman I had built my entire adult life with was talking in coded hushes to a man behind my back. Clutching the edge of the sink, I stared into the mirror. My reflection looked haunted, the lines around my eyes deeper than I remembered. In that moment, I felt something inside me break a quiet, painful snap. Love is a foundation, but betrayal is a wrecking ball. My marriage felt like it was teetering on the brink of collapse. Just as the walls closed in, I got a text from Eloise, an old friend from my early 20s. She wrote, "Heard you're back on your feet. Want to grab coffee?" Eloise and I had drifted after she moved to another city, but we'd stayed casually in touch through social media. She was never close friends with Clarissa, so I felt comfortable around her in a way that didn't tie back to my marriage. Maybe that's why I decided, almost impulsively, to say yes. We met at a local coffee shop, a small place filled with warm lights and indie music. Eloise arrived in jeans and a cozy sweater, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She gave me a tight hug, and for a split second I remembered simpler times, late-night parties, driving around aimlessly, talking about our dreams. Before I was a husband, a father, a man consumed with suspicion. She pulled back, scanning me. "You look exhausted," she said gently. "Want to tell me what's going on?" We slid into a corner booth. The hum of espresso machines buzzed around us. I toyed with the coffee stirrer, trying to find the right words. "I'm worried about my marriage," I finally said. "Clarissa, she's been acting strange. Cold." Eloise's expression shifted, sympathy clouding her brown eyes. "I'm so sorry, Logan. Is it serious?" I swallowed, nodding. Potentially. I found evidence of calls to another man. I overheard her telling someone that he's suspicious. It's like I'm living with a stranger. She laid a hand on mine. "That's awful. Have you considered couples therapy? Confronting her?" My laugh was hollow. "I've tried. She won't open up. She deflects or accuses me of prying." I shook my head, my frustration mounting. "I just don't know what to do." Eloise squeezed my hand before letting go. "Look, you have every right to clarity in your relationship. If she's unwilling to talk, maybe you need outside help, or you need to protect yourself." She paused, then added, "Just be certain before you act. Once you make a big move, you can't take it back." Her words resonated, echoing Marcus's and Cassandra's advice. The conversation with Eloise felt safe, though, like she was a neutral ground. She didn't have a stake in my marriage. She just wanted me to find peace. As we parted ways, she offered a quick hug. "Whatever happens, promise to keep me updated, okay?" That same day, I found myself telling her more than I'd admitted to anyone, even Reggie. The guilt, the anger, the confusion. She listened patiently, never once judging or telling me I was overreacting. By the time we left the coffee shop, some small part of me felt lighter, like I wasn't wrestling with my suspicions alone. Later that evening, I was sifting through more phone logs and text records. Marcus had forwarded me a screenshot from an online directory showing Kieran's employee profile. Marketing associate, joined Clarissa's firm 9 months ago. 9 months. Right around the time she started working longer hours. My gut twisted. I heard Clarissa's car pull into the driveway and quickly closed my laptop. She walked in with her phone pressed to her ear. Yes, she was saying. "I'll handle it tomorrow." After a moment, She ended the call and offered me a tight-lipped smile. "How was your day?" I asked, nerves coiled. "Long," she replied, stripping off her jacket. "I'm heading to bed early. Gotta be up at 5 for a conference call." She brushed past me with barely a glance. The hallway lights flickered above her, casting multiple shadows. I stood rooted to the spot, feeling the distance between us swell. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from Eloise. "Checking in, how's your evening?" My heart clenched. It felt surreal that the best emotional support I'd had lately was from an old friend. I typed back a quick reply. "She's home, but nothing's changed. I'm hitting a wall." Eloise's message came right back. "Take care of yourself, Logan. Don't let this break you." I slipped my phone away, half wishing Clarissa had shown that kind of concern. A day passed, then two. Finally, Reggie and Marcus arranged a discreet meeting at Marcus's place. We gathered around his dining table, laptops open. The blinds were drawn, adding a clandestine feel. "Feels like we're staging some FBI sting," Marcus joked, but none of us really laughed. They walked me through the call times. Clarissa's calls to Kieran spiked around lunch and after 7 p.m. Then they cross-checked it with new data, text messages. We couldn't see the content, but the timestamps lined up. Often, Clarissa would text Kieran in the middle of the night or right after I left for work. My stomach churned, each piece of information hitting me like a blow. "This is definitely an ongoing relationship," Reggie said quietly, tapping the screen. "Unless they're planning some massive corporate project day and night, it's personal." My throat felt dry. "Any references on social media?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Marcus shook his head. "No public tags or mentions, but they're both friends on each other's pages. She restricted your view from her account, though. That's suspicious in itself." I clenched my fists on the table. How do we confirm if it's a physical affair, not just emotional? Marcus exchanged a glance with Reggie. Then he said, "You might want to hire a private investigator, or stake out, see if they meet up, but that can get messy and pricey." Reggie leaned forward. "Look, man, I know you're hurting, but you need to be systematic. Gather all the proof you can. If this goes to a divorce, you'll want evidence if you're filing on grounds of adultery." The word divorce stung like a brand. I stared at the numbers on the laptop screen, part of me wanting to scream at Clarissa for betraying everything we built. Another part was in denial, hoping there might be some explanation. But I was running out of plausible excuses for her. That night, as I lay awake replaying the data in my mind, Clarissa walked into our bedroom. She seemed to hesitate at the threshold, phone in hand. The clock read 11:12 p.m. I feigned sleep, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw her approach the bed. Her gaze drifted over me, and for a split second I thought I detected remorse in her eyes. Then she turned away, phone lighting up in her hand, and stepped out into the hallway to continue typing. I exhaled shakily. Doubt, anger, heartbreak, they all brewed together inside me. But in that moment, something else sparked. Determination. If she was lying, I'd find out the whole truth. I wouldn't endure this endless cycle of half-answers and silent dinners. I owed it to Oliver, to Dylan, and most of all to myself. Eloise's gentle words at the coffee shop rang in my ears. Be certain before you act. It was advice that steadied my resolve. I needed clarity, a final confirmation that would end this wretched limbo. Whether it destroyed our marriage or offered some improbable explanation, it had to be better than walking on eggshells every single day. In the quiet hush of night, the house felt haunted by our silences. I stared at the outline of Clarissa's figure through the crack of the doorway, watching her silhouette shift as she tapped on her phone. That was my wife. Or at least, she used to be. A part of me wondered if she ever truly left, or if the woman I knew was long gone, replaced by someone who wore her face but belonged to someone else. An uneasy calm settled over the house after my late-night realization that Clarissa's calls with Kieran Collins weren't just innocent work chats. She acted almost cordial toward me for the next couple of days, like she was trying to smooth over the tension. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed she was genuinely warming back up, but I sensed her politeness was more about keeping me off her trail. I decided it was time to dig deeper. The vague phone records and suspicious mentions of Kieran only answered half my questions. I needed something more definite if I was going to confront Clarissa, or better yet, protect myself if it came to a messy showdown. Late on a Thursday evening, I called Reggie again. "I know you already helped me figure out who Kieran is," I told him, pacing our living room. "But I want to see if we can track text messages in real time. Maybe a covert app or something that mirrors her phone's data." Reggie let out a low whistle on the other end of the line. "You're talking about some James Bond-level hacking, man. Are you sure?" "Positive," I said, swallowing the tightness in my throat. "She's shutting me out, Reggie. I need clarity, or I'll lose my mind." He sighed. "I'll see what I can do. There's software out there that can log messages if we can install it on her device, but you'll have to physically get hold of her phone for a couple minutes." I stared at Clarissa's phone on the kitchen island. She was in the backyard, speaking with Oliver about tomorrow's errands. "Yeah, I'll find a way." The following night, fortune struck. Clarissa set her phone on the charger in our bedroom and went to take a shower. The water pipes rumbled overhead, telling me I had only a few minutes. Heart hammering, I quietly powered on her phone, followed the instructions Reggie had given me, and installed the tracking software. A swirl of guilt formed in my stomach as I typed in the access code. This felt like the ultimate invasion of her privacy. But then I remembered her hushed midnight call about me being suspicious and told myself, she started this, not me. Within 5 minutes, the app was installed. I heard the shower shut off, so I hurriedly placed the phone back exactly how I found it. My hands shook when I ducked back into the hallway, heart racing like I'd run a marathon. An electric wave of adrenaline coursed through my veins, mingling with the ache of betrayal. The next morning, around 8:30, Reggie texted me. "Reggie, SMS. It's done. I'll forward everything to you as it logs. Good luck, buddy." I thanked him silently, then got dressed for work. Clarissa was already gone, leaving a note on the counter. "Left early. Big meeting. Don't wait up." I stared at her familiar handwriting. It struck me how easy it was for her to lie these days, how mundane the act of deception had become for her. At the office, I found myself half focused on spreadsheets and half glued to my phone, waiting for updates from Reggie. By lunch, data started pouring in. He sent me screen captures Clarissa texting Kieran about when they could meet. The timestamps matched her late hours at the office. One message from Kieran read, "Kieran, missed you last night, stuck at home. Let's meet after work soon." And Clarissa replied, "Clarissa, agreed. Logan's schedule changed, so gotta be careful. I'll text you when I have an opening." Reading that line made my chest feel hollow, like my rib cage had been scooped out with an ice cream spoon. This wasn't just flirting. It was planning. They were weaving my schedule around their secret meetups, fully aware I was in the dark. My eyes burned with anger, but also heartbreak. The woman I'd married who once greeted me with home-cooked meals and kisses was calculating her hidden romance like a chess match, and I was the clueless piece on the board. In the early afternoon, Marcus dropped by my office. He'd gotten wind of my predicament through Reggie and wanted to see me in person. Tall, broad-shouldered, Marcus had the kind of presence that was hard to ignore. He shut the door behind him, then perched on the edge of my desk. "You holding up?" he asked, voice hushed. "Reggie said you've got more proof?" I nodded grimly. "Texts, real-time logs. She's definitely sneaking around with Kieran, meeting him after work, lying to me, planning their next steps." He ran a hand over his short beard. "What's your game plan?" Bile rose in my throat. "I'm collecting everything. I want a full timeline, calls, texts, possible meetups. If I confront her now, she'll just deny or spin it. I need to be bulletproof." Marcus's gaze flickered with concern. "Be careful, Logan. This stuff can eat you alive, you know?" I swallowed hard. "It already is, man. But I can't stop until I know exactly how deep this goes." Marcus didn't have an argument for that. Instead, he patted my shoulder and headed out, leaving me alone with my storm of thoughts. That evening, once Oliver had gone to a friend's house and Clarissa was presumably at work, I holed up in my study to review the logs more thoroughly. One message from a couple weeks back revealed they'd been in contact for months, way longer than I suspected. Kieran joked about how Clarissa was stuck with a boring husband, while she laughed about my old-fashioned ways. My breath caught in my throat when I read that. I might not be the life of every party, but I'd never considered myself boring. Dylan called around that time, checking on my knee. It felt surreal to talk about physical therapy exercises while the latest text from Clarissa read, "Can't wait to see you away from everyone." I kept my cool, though. My kids didn't deserve to be tangled in my fury. As the night wore on, I compiled screenshots, chronological notes like a detective building a case. With each snippet of their conversation, I pictured Clarissa's face, smiling at the phone, possibly in our living room while I sat in the next room, oblivious. The sense of betrayal gnawed at me. Sometime around midnight, I heard the front door. I scrambled to close everything on my screen and flicked off the lamp. When Clarissa poked her head into the study, I feigned browsing an old album of martial arts photos. "Hey," she said, voice subdued. "Sorry I'm late." I just nodded. "Big project still?" She hesitated, eyes darting to my blank computer screen. "Yeah, a big project. You know how it goes." I forced a tight-lipped smile, gripping the arms of my chair to keep from yelling. "Sure," I replied. My stomach twisted at the irony of our calm exchange, her blatant lie, my fake acceptance. The tension crackled like static electricity in the room, but neither of us made a move to dissipate it. We were two actors in a twisted play, each determined to keep up appearances. At last, she sighed. "I'm exhausted. I'm gonna crash." With that, she stepped out. Alone again, I let the wave of anger wash over me. She's lying, I'm lying back, and the whole house reeked of falsehoods. I powered my computer back on and continued archiving every new message Reggie sent. Some part of me felt sick, prying into my own wife's life. But another part felt justified. If she chose to shatter our bond, I owed it to myself and maybe our sons to face the truth, no matter how ugly. Even with all the solid evidence mounting against Clarissa, I wrestled with my emotions every day. There were moments when I looked at her across the dining table and remembered all the years we'd spent building a life together, raising Dylan and Oliver. My throat would tighten at the thought that soon, everything might crash and burn. Clarissa's behavior only amplified my turmoil. She was cold one moment, accusing me of being distant and overly polite the next, as though trying to maintain a fragile peace. If it weren't for those explicit messages to Kieran, I might have tried to salvage our bond. But how could I repair something she was actively destroying? One evening, Oliver got home from football practice, sweaty and obviously stressed. I caught him stuffing a note into his backpack before dinner. When I gently asked if everything was okay, he shrugged, face pinched. "Kids at school are talking about how Mom's never at games anymore. They think she doesn't support me. It's embarrassing." I exchanged a glance with him, heart aching. "Sorry, buddy. She's been busy." It was a hollow response, and he knew it. That same night, as we cleared dishes, Clarissa came into the kitchen, looking half distracted. "Oliver," she said, voice tense, "we need to figure out your college application soon. I can't do it last minute." Oliver's face hardened. "You can't do anything last minute, Mom. You're never around." His outburst startled both of us. Clarissa scowled, clearly offended. "I'm working, Oliver. It's not like I'm off lounging somewhere." He slammed the dishwasher door shut. "I don't see Dad missing everything, and he's the one with the knee injury." A knot formed in my stomach. While I appreciated his defense, I also worried about his frustration boiling over. Clarissa's eyes flickered to me, expecting me to back her up. But I couldn't. "Oliver," I said gently, "calm down. We'll figure out a schedule for your applications, okay?" He shook his head, tears brimming. Without another word, he stormed upstairs, leaving Clarissa and me in a thick silence. She glared at me. "A little support would be nice." I swallowed. "He's hurting. Maybe if you spent more time with him, he wouldn't feel so alone." My words stung, and she stiffened. "You think I'm not doing enough? That's rich coming from you. You're the one who's always sneaking around lately." She said it with no sense of irony, which almost made me laugh out loud. But the fury in her eyes told me she genuinely believed I was the problem. I exhaled slowly, controlling my anger. "Right. I'm the one sneaking around." "Got it." A wave of bitterness crashed over me as I left the kitchen. Behind me, I heard Clarissa mutter something under her breath, but I refused to engage. That night, Dylan came over briefly to pick up some old books he needed for a college course. Spotting the tension in the house, he pulled me aside in the hallway. "What's going on, Dad? Mom seems ready to snap." Oliver's sulking in his room, and you look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. For a moment, I wanted to spill everything. Tell him his mother was lying, that she was in some illicit relationship with a coworker. But I held back. He was 22, sure, but this level of betrayal would rock him. I didn't want him caught in the crossfire, not yet. "I'm just under a lot of stress," I said finally. "The knee, work, stuff around the house." Dylan's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't press. Instead, he patted my back. "If you need anything, just call." I forced a smile. "Thanks, son." After he left, the house felt even emptier despite Oliver being upstairs. My phone buzzed Reggie again. More timestamps, more screenshots. I scrolled through them, a hollow ache in my chest. Clarissa was telling Kieran she wished she could fast forward to a time when it was just them, without my presence complicating things. Fast forward like our 2 decades and 2 kids together didn't matter. My hand trembled around my phone. I had to step outside to clear my head. The autumn air was cool on my face as I leaned against the porch railing. Winston, our cat, meowed from inside, pawing at the glass door like he sensed my anxiety. I stared at the darkening sky, a swirl of purple and gray. My life felt about the same color scheme, shadowy and uncertain. Memories of Clarissa's once loving gaze flickered in my mind. Back then, she'd press her forehead to mine and say, "We've got this. It's us against the world." Now, it was me against her, or maybe her and Kieran against me. My stomach twisted at the thought. Over the next few days, her growing hostility took shape in small arguments. She'd accuse me of checking up on her, or she'd toss offhand comments like, "You wouldn't get it," whenever I asked about her schedule. I was struggling to act like I didn't know everything. The silent knowledge weighed on me every time she lied. At one point, she snapped at Oliver for leaving his shoes in the hallway, and he snapped right back, tensions flaring in ways we never saw before. Our home once felt warm, full of conversation. Now it was a minefield. Even the simplest exchange could detonate into anger or tears. I felt Oliver's eyes on me at times, as if pleading for help. But I couldn't fix something that Clarissa was actively destroying. All the while, I debated confronting her. Yet I stopped myself. The evidence still wasn't complete in my eyes. I wanted to be absolutely sure how far this affair went when it started, how often they met, what Clarissa truly felt. The waiting was agony, but better that than confronting her and letting her spin the narrative. At work, I confided briefly in Patrice, my manager, about general marital stress. She advised me to speak with HR if I needed personal leave. I declined for now, not wanting to broadcast my troubles publicly. Patrice gave me a sympathetic smile that almost broke me. It felt odd to get more empathy from colleagues than from my own wife. Back at home, Clarissa's phone was constantly buzzing at night, though she tried to keep it on silent. Our dinners dwindled to microwave meals or quick takeout. Oliver largely ate in his room, claiming he had to study. I found myself missing the times I'd grumble about cooking or cleaning because back then, at least we were a team. Time and again, I pictured those text messages. "Logan's schedule changed, so gotta be careful." Each morning, I woke up with that bitter taste in my mouth, a reminder that everything she did around me was a performance. Still, I forced a smile in front of Oliver, at least attempting to shield him from the worst of our tension. In my quiet moments, a single question gnawed at me. Is it truly worth saving, or am I already done? My heart hadn't decided, but my head told me the damage might be irreparable. And that war, the one between heart and head, raged on, overshadowing any hope that Clarissa and I could just talk it out. She'd left that path behind the day she chose Kieran over me. I woke up one Sunday morning determined to change tactics. Up until now, I'd been slinking around, gathering intel, letting Clarissa carry on. But if I wanted to see how she'd react under pressure and maybe get her to slip up, I'd need to act differently. "Play distant," my notes said. "Make her nervous." It wasn't a kind strategy, but neither was having a secret affair. So I started disappearing for hours at a time, heading to the gym, though my knee still ached. Sometimes I just sat in my car at a park, reading or messing around on my phone. A few times I ducked into a local diner for a solitary meal, leaving no explanation behind. Whenever Clarissa asked, "Where were you?" I'd shrug and say, "Oh, out, Got some things to do. Echoing her own vague language right back at her, it drove her nuts. Late one evening, she cornered me by the living room window, arms folded tightly across her chest. "You're never home anymore," she said accusingly. "Oliver hardly sees you. He was asking where you went after work." I arched an eyebrow. "Busy," I replied coolly. "You know how it goes." Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "That's what I say to you, and you throw attitude about it. Now you're doing the same?" A flicker of satisfaction sparked within me at her frustrated tone. "Funny how that works, huh?" I answered. Her eyes flashed with anger. "Are you having some midlife crisis? Or an affair?" She spat out the word as if testing me, trying to gauge my reaction. It took every ounce of control not to let my laugh turn bitter. Instead, I smirked. "Why would you think that?" I asked. "Are you worried I'm stepping out on you? Shouldn't you trust me, Clarissa?" She didn't know what to say. After a few seconds, she spun on her heel and stomped upstairs. I could practically see the gears turning in her head, searching for answers. It was almost gratifying, reminding her she didn't hold all the cards. That same week, I organized the evidence. I had screenshots of texts, call logs, dates, times. The file on my laptop, labeled Project Red, grew thicker by the day. I took those digital files and backed them up onto a thumb drive, stuffing it into a small lockbox under my desk. I had a fleeting thought. Am I going too far? Is revenge warping me? But the memory of Clarissa's betrayal hardened my resolve. If she wanted to burn our marriage, I'd at least make sure I wasn't the one getting scorched. I had a short lunch break with Eloise one afternoon. We met at a corner cafe near my office. We'd occasionally texted since our last meetup, and she'd been a quiet pillar of emotional support without prying too much. When she saw the weariness on my face, her own features softened. "Logan, you look haunted," she said, concern evident in her voice. I sipped my coffee, stirring it just to have something to do with my hands. Things at home are rough. Clarissa's reclusive and suspicious. Oliver's upset. I'm basically living a double life, gathering proof of her affair while pretending I know nothing. Eloise frowned. "That's a lot to handle, especially on top of your job and your knee recovery. Maybe you should talk to a counselor." I shrugged, though I knew she meant well. "Not ready for that," I admitted. "Right now, I just have to see this through. If I talk to someone and Clarissa finds out, she'll tighten her guard." She nodded, pushing her hair behind her ear. "Just promise you'll be careful. Hatred and hurt can destroy you from the inside." It struck me how her advice mirrored Marcus's and Reggie's. I forced a small smile, not wanting to drag her into my chaos. "I'll be okay," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure it was true. By Thursday, my new routine of mysterious outings started yielding results. Clarissa grew visibly anxious. She'd text me, "Where are you?" And I'd wait hours to reply with a non-committal busy talk later. The roles reversed. Now she was the one waiting at home, checking clocks, wondering if I was with someone else. Kieran's texts to her, which I still monitored, showed him telling her to stay calm, that it was probably nothing. She responded with frantic emojis and worried lines about not wanting to lose her family just yet. Just yet, I thought with a grimace. Like I was an old car she was keeping around until she upgraded to a newer model. The sheer gall of it both enraged and saddened me. My only comfort was that this game I was playing pretending I might be cheating forced her to question her own stability. Oliver must have sensed the shift too, because he began asking me if everything was okay between Mom and me. I gave him vague reassurances, but it broke my heart to see him so on edge. He deserved honesty, but I couldn't risk telling him. Not while Clarissa's treachery was still in motion. One evening, Oliver sat with me at the dining room table, quietly finishing his homework. Clarissa was out again this time, claiming she had dinner with a potential client. I tried to help Oliver with a math problem, but he suddenly blurted, "Dad, are you mad at Mom?" I looked up from the workbook, taken aback by the directness. "Why do you ask?" He fiddled with his pencil. "She's been different, and now you're leaving all the time. She keeps complaining about you being secretive. You two used to talk. Now you barely say a word unless it's about groceries or the bills." An ache pulsed in my chest. "It's complicated," I said quietly. "Sometimes adults go through rough patches. It's not your fault." He searched my eyes for a long moment, then nodded like he sort of understood. It reminded me how young he still was, even though he tried to act so grown-up. I patted his arm, wishing desperately I could shield him from the storm brewing. Late that night, Clarissa finally came home. I pretended to be halfway asleep on the couch, my phone's screen turned off. She hovered by the door as if checking on me. I almost expected her to say something, an apology, a confession, but she walked away without a word. I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the dark TV screen, her shoulders slumped, a weary look on her face. But pity for her barely registered anymore. My anger was too raw. Pulling out my phone, I skimmed the newly logged messages from her conversation with Kieran. Clarissa. He's acting so strange. I'm worried he might actually be seeing someone else, Kieran. Focus on us. You said you'd handle it. If you don't want to lose him yet, fine. But don't let him scare you. I clenched my jaw. She's worried she might lose me? After months of her betrayal, she finally realized I wasn't just the passive husband in the background. Good. Let her sweat. Let her imagine all the scenarios where I'd walk out before she was ready. As I shut off my phone and slipped it into my pocket, I noticed the stack of evidence in my laptop bag. Pages of screenshots, times, and codes. Each piece was a reminder of just how deep her betrayal ran. Yet for all the satisfaction I got from flipping the script, a question nibbled at my conscience. Was I becoming as deceptive as she was? The line between righteous vengeance and outright cruelty blurred day by day, but I pushed the doubt aside. Clarissa had set this slow-burning fire, and I wasn't about to let it consume me without a plan. My father once told me, if you find yourself in a war you didn't start, make sure you're the one who ends it. That notion anchored me. One way or another, I would end this on my terms. Standing in my dimly lit home office, I carefully wrapped up a few of my most cherished possessions photo albums, an old trophy from a martial arts competition, a worn notebook filled with scribbled memories of my boys when they were toddlers. These things were precious in a way Clarissa had seemingly forgotten. I wasn't about to leave them behind if all hell broke loose. My friend Reggie arrived an hour later, stepping quietly inside. "You sure about this?" he asked, eyeing the small boxes and the duffel bag by my desk. I nodded, locking the office door behind us for privacy. If Clarissa gets wind of my plan, she could toss my stuff or block me from it if the marriage collapses overnight. I need these items safe. He gave a low grunt of acknowledgement. So we're taking them to my place, yeah? Yeah, I murmured. Just store them in your guest room for now. I'll move them again once I'm sure about my final steps. We started loading the boxes into Reggie's trunk under the cloak of evening. Oliver was at a friend's and Clarissa was apparently meeting a client. Again, the quiet hiss of cars passing by on the street provided a tense soundtrack to our covert operation. Each time a neighbor's porch light flicked on, my pulse spiked, imagining Clarissa suddenly pulling into the driveway. I hate that it's come to this, Reggie said softly, heaving a box of old photos. But I get it, man. You're protecting yourself. I exhaled, a shaky breath. Yeah, thanks for helping. After Reggie drove off, I locked the front door and sat on the couch, the emptiness of the living room swallowing me. My life felt like a slow-motion train wreck, one where I saw the crash coming but couldn't stop it. Instead, I was collecting valuables and stepping off the train, letting it derail behind me. A couple days later, I left work early and stopped by a nondescript apartment complex across town. I'd done research online reading tenant reviews, analyzing the safety of the neighborhood. The on-site manager, Mr. Pearson, greeted me with a friendly smile. He was older, probably in his 60s, wearing suspenders over a plaid shirt. "You must be Logan," he said, checking his clipboard. "Looking for a one-bedroom, month-to-month lease?" "That's me," I confirmed, scanning the brick exterior. "Got anything decent available soon?" Mr. Pearson nodded. "We've got a small unit on the 3rd floor. Not fancy, but it's quiet. You can sign today if you like." I followed him to inspect the unit bare walls, plain carpet, a lingering scent of fresh paint. The place was modest, maybe even bland, but it felt like a sanctuary compared to the tension at home. Standing at the narrow windows, I could see a courtyard below. An old oak tree swayed gently in the breeze. My heart pounded as I considered the reality. If I signed now, I'd have an exit strategy. a refuge if things blew up with Clarissa. For a moment, I pictured Oliver's face. Would he feel betrayed if I vanished into an apartment across town? But I also knew I couldn't stay in that house if Clarissa's affair came fully into the open, not without losing my sanity. Mr. Pearson cleared his throat, pulling me from my thoughts. Take your time, son. But I'll tell you, this unit won't stay empty long. Cheap rent in a decent neighborhood is rare. I glanced around once more, then nodded, a lump in my throat. I'll take it. We went downstairs to the manager's office to finalize details. I signed my name on the lease, paying a deposit. As the pen left the paper, I felt a strange mix of liberation and dread. This was a commitment, an acknowledgement that my marriage might not survive. Still, as I pocketed the keys, I realized I hadn't felt this sense of control in weeks. Back at home, I hid the lease documents in my locked filing cabinet. If Clarissa found them, the jig would be up. I was playing a dangerous game, pretending all was normal with her while forging a path out. My phone buzzed. Marcus, SMS. All set with that second credit union account. Funds are there if you need them for the new place. I typed a quick thank you. The financial side of my plan was crucial. If Clarissa discovered I'd been moving money to a personal account, she'd definitely know I was preparing for something bigger than a rough patch. But I had to protect myself. The last thing I wanted was to be blindsided financially if she decided to leave me for Kieran, or if I ended up filing for divorce. Around dinner time, Clarissa arrived home looking restless. She spotted me sitting at the kitchen table balancing a checkbook. Arching an eyebrow, she asked, "What's with all the money talk? Paying bills?" "Yeah," I lied smoothly. "Just checking our budget, making sure we don't overspend." She snorted softly, setting down her phone. "Funny. I thought I was the one in charge of finances." "Why the sudden interest?" I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Your schedule's hectic. Figured I'd pick up the slack." She eyed me suspiciously but didn't press further. Grabbing a glass of water, she announced, "I'm going to bed early." Typical. No family dinner, no conversation. After she disappeared upstairs, I exhaled in relief. My double life was nerve-wracking between transferring my valuables to Reggie's place, signing the new lease, and maintaining a facade of normalcy. But I reminded myself, the end goal is worth it. If I discovered the perfect moment to expose her infidelity, I wanted to be fully prepared to walk away. The next day, Oliver asked if I could drive him to an afternoon study group. Normally, Clarissa might have handled it, but she'd left early for another suspicious client meeting. I agreed, grateful for time with my youngest son. On the drive, he stared out the window, thoughtful. "You and Mom, are you okay?" he said quietly, not looking my way. My heart squeezed. "We're figuring things out," I replied. "Why?" He fiddled with the zipper on his backpack. "You both seem distant. I heard her telling Aunt Cassandra over the phone that she's worried about you not coming home some nights." A flicker of surprise ran through me. Clarissa had confided in Cassandra. That was new information. I managed a neutral tone. "I've been going out with friends sometimes, no big deal. She might be overreacting." Oliver finally glanced at me. "I just want things to go back to normal." I clenched the steering wheel, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Me too," I whispered, though I knew normal was gone forever. When we reached the school, Oliver thanked me and hopped out. I watched him stride toward the campus doors with squared shoulders, trying to appear confident. Inside, I felt guilt swirl again. He was caught in a silent war, and I could offer no real explanation. That night, I texted Reggie and Marcus with a single word: ready. They both understood the meaning. My personal items were safe, the finances were arranged, the apartment was leased. All that remained was finding the right moment to deploy the evidence to expose Clarissa's betrayal in a way she couldn't deny. I paced the living room, imagining how I'd orchestrate everything, but I forced myself not to rush. One misstep, and I could blow months of preparation. I envisioned Clarissa's stunned face when she realized I wasn't her clueless husband anymore. Deep in my gut, a dark satisfaction flickered, yet overshadowing it was a lingering sadness. We had shared so many years. That ending it on such treacherous grounds felt tragic. Still, in a house built on lies, perhaps a strategic exit was the only honest thing left. Clutching the newly minted apartment key in my pocket, I let the reality sink in. I had a way out, and soon she would have no place to hide. I stood outside a modest brick building downtown, gripping a folder full of printouts. The sign near the entrance read, "Weinberg and Dorsey, Attorneys at Law." My breath fogged in the cool morning air. This was the place my sister Cassandra suggested when I confided in her that I needed legal counsel, someone well-versed in family law, who could handle an at-fault approach to divorce if it came to that. And by now, I was sure it would. Inside, the office smelled of fresh coffee and printer ink. The receptionist, a petite woman with a calm demeanor, led me to a private conference room. A few minutes later, Miss Evelyn Dorsey stepped in, her posture crisp and confident. She wore simple black frames that gave her a scholarly look. After the usual pleasantries, she wasted no time delving into the reason for my visit. "So, Mr. Reeves," she began, opening a yellow notepad, "you suspect your wife of infidelity, correct?" I exhaled. "I don't just suspect it. I have tangible proof: texts, calls, possibly meetups. I've been gathering data for weeks." She offered a slight nod, her pen scratching on the pad. "Infidelity can be grounds for an at-fault divorce in our state, but it also comes down to how strong the evidence is. Have you confronted her yet?" My grip tightened on the folder. "Not directly. I'm waiting for the right moment. The affair is still ongoing, and I want to leave no doubt. But I'm here because I need to protect myself financially, legally. I'm moving money into a personal account, and I've already secured a lease on a small apartment." Evelyn studied me for a moment. "You're serious about this? All right. Before we discuss strategies, let's confirm a few points." She asked me about our assets, how long we'd been married, 23 years, any prenuptial agreements, none. I answered in a measured tone, doing my best to suppress the mix of anger and sadness that always bubbled up when I spoke of Clarissa's betrayal. Finally, Evelyn set her pen down. "Based on everything you've shown me, you're building a solid case for an at-fault divorce on grounds of adultery. Keep logging that evidence. The moment you're ready to file, we'll proceed. Meanwhile, do nothing that might appear reckless. Courts often examine the conduct of both parties." I nodded. "I understand. I'll stay calm." Walking out of that building, I felt an odd mix of power and dread. Part of me hated how cold and calculated it seemed, preparing for a legal fight with a woman I once adored. Yet I reminded myself Clarissa had forced my hand. If she wanted to blow up our life for Kieran, I wasn't going to be left in ruins. That evening, I had dinner with my friends Reggie and Marcus at a casual burger joint. The neon lights in the window reflected off our table, painting everything in a soft red glow. Over fries and sodas, I filled them in on my meeting with Miss Dorsey. Marcus drummed his fingers. "So, you've got all your ducks in a row, legally speaking?" "Yeah," I said, tasting the bitterness in my own voice. She helped me restructure some joint funds into a personal account. I also asked about spousal support issues, just in case Clarissa tries to bleed me dry if we divorce. Reggie nodded gravely. "Smart. She might try anything once she realizes you're done playing nice." I leaned back, shoulders tense. I'm not sure if I'll ever be ready for that final confrontation, but I'm close. Every day, Clarissa's lies stack higher. I just need the perfect spark to set off the explosion. They both gave sympathetic nods. Nobody toasted or cheered. It felt more like preparing for a storm than celebrating. The hush between us carried the gravity of what was coming. Meanwhile, I needed to shore up the illusion that I might be the one having an affair, or at least preoccupied with something shady. In a way, it felt twisted to lower myself to Clarissa's level. But if my suspicious behavior made her sweat, maybe it would give me the upper hand. So I started ignoring her calls in the evenings, letting them ring through to voicemail. I'd roll in at odd hours, sometimes accompanied by Reggie or Marcus, but mostly alone, just to reinforce the sense that I was up to something. Clarissa took the bait. One night, close to midnight, she confronted me in the living room. My knee still ached from an extended day out, and I was limping a bit. She crossed her arms, face pinched with anger. "I tried calling you 5 times, Logan. Where were you?" I peeled off my jacket. "Out." "Out? With who?" she demanded. I stifled a sardonic grin. If only she knew how perfect it was to have her demanding my whereabouts. "Just friends," I answered smoothly. heading into the kitchen for a glass of water. She trailed behind me, eyes narrowed. Which friends, Marcus, Reggie, or is it some woman you're hiding? That last jab nearly made me choke on my water. The hypocrisy was thick enough to slice with a knife. You'd love that, wouldn't you? I shot back, quietly seething. It'd justify all your secrets. Don't twist this on me, she spat, but I could see real panic flicker across her expression. You're the one acting like a stranger. Why are you doing this? She sounded almost wounded, as if my shift in behavior had blindsided her. I couldn't hold in the bitter laugh that escaped my throat. Ironic, I said, meeting her gaze coldly. If you're so worried about an affair, maybe you should consider your own track record first. Her face went pale. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Then she spun around and stormed upstairs without another word. My heart hammered in my chest, adrenaline flooding my veins. That confrontation had been dangerously close to revealing my knowledge of her affair. But I kept my composure, letting her twist in uncertainty. I had no doubt she'd text Kieran about it that night. The next morning, Reggie confirmed my suspicion by sending me a snippet from Clarissa's phone log. She'd messaged Kieran around 1 a.m., complaining about me being distant and cryptic. Kieran's response was short. Focus on the future, not him. A sneer crossed my lips reading that. The future they're planning together. Perfect. That would only make my final blow more devastating. A few days later, Miss Dorsey reached out to update me on some documents I'd need if I decided to serve Clarissa with divorce papers. She'd prepared a preliminary draft waiting for my signal. I stored a printed copy in the same lockbox with my ever-growing pile of incriminating screenshots. By then, I'd become numb to the heartbreak. Nights were spent turning the evidence in my hands, imagining the day I'd finally drop it all on Clarissa like a warhead. Some might say revenge is corrosive, but in my eyes, it was the only means of closure. She had chosen to degrade our marriage, so I would finish what she started. At home, Clarissa was restless. She stared at her phone constantly, anxiety writ plain on her face. Kieran urged her to cut me off and demand a quick separation, but she waffled, claiming timing matters. I gleaned this from their messages, my spy software still running. It amused me that she was juggling me, Kieran, and the facade of a functional family for Oliver's sake. Oliver, poor kid, remained on edge, noticing my aloofness and Clarissa's tension. I tried to assure him everything was fine, but my attempts felt hollow. Part of me hated that I couldn't protect him from the truth yet. But soon, it had all come crashing down. I just needed one final push. One late evening, after Clarissa had gone to bed, I stood in the silent hallway, gazing at the family photos. Us at the beach, Oliver and Dylan building sandcastles, Clarissa smiling in her old swimsuit. I felt a pang of nostalgia. Despite the adrenaline rush of my plan, the sense of loss never truly left. This woman was my wife of 23 years. Now, she was my adversary. The old days were gone, replaced by subterfuge and heartbreak. I sighed, heading to my study. There, under a dim lamp, I reviewed the at-fault divorce papers one more time. Missy. Dorsey had spelled out the grounds clearly: infidelity, documented evidence, potential spousal support conditions if challenged. It looked brutally official, with lines for signatures, legal jargon, and a signature block for a notary. I pictured handing these to Clarissa, the shock on her face. My jaw clenched. Soon, but not quite yet. Tucking them away, I whispered under my breath, "Get ready, Clarissa, because once I pull the trigger, there's no going back." Tension in the house reached a fever pitch within days of that confrontation in the kitchen. Clarissa still eyed me with suspicion, and I kept up my distant facade. I'd come home late, reeking of cologne from the gym locker room or a bar where I'd met Reggie, and her eyes would narrow like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. We hardly spoke unless Oliver was around. Oliver, meanwhile, grew more unnerved. He noticed each small shift, like how Clarissa had started wearing more makeup on weeknights, or how I was vanishing without explanation. One weekend morning, I found him sitting at the dining room table, hunched over a stack of college brochures, looking utterly defeated. "Dad," he said softly as I approached, "can we talk?" My chest tightened. "Sure," I replied, sinking into the chair next to him. He fiddled with a brochure from a state university. I don't know what's going on with you and Mom, but it's killing me. She's snapping at me for little things, and you look like you'd rather be anywhere else but home. Did I do something wrong? The hurt in his eyes was a dagger to my heart. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Oliver, you didn't do anything. This is between your mother and me, and it's complicated. His gaze dropped. She's never around, you're acting weird, and we barely talk as a family. Even Dylan said he feels it every time he visits. My mind flashed to all the secrets I held. The affair, my plan, the new lease, the hidden binder of evidence. We're handling it, I said, forcing calm into my voice. I promise you'll understand eventually. But for now, just focus on your school applications, okay? He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Okay, he whispered, voice trembling. I gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze, though guilt gnawed at me from within. Shortly after that, Clarissa tried something I hadn't anticipated: physical closeness. One evening we were both in the living room, Oliver upstairs. She switched off the TV, then sidled up beside me on the couch. Her perfume was potent, her hand resting on my thigh. We hadn't been intimate, really intimate, in months. Logan, she said softly, forcing warmth into her tone. We've been so distant. I miss you. It took every ounce of self-control not to recoil. My mind screamed, she's faking this. She's trying to seduce you into forgetting. But outwardly, I kept a veneer of icy politeness. Oh, you miss me? I almost laughed at how forced it sounded. She pressed closer, tracing a finger along my shoulder. Yes, she murmured. I hate this wall between us. Let's go upstairs and talk. The invitation was clear. It might have been tempting once craving that old intimacy, but now I knew exactly who she'd been sharing her secrets and likely more with. My stomach churned. I gently untangled her hand from me, then stood. I'm not sure that's a good idea, I said evenly. I'm exhausted. Her expression darkened with hurt or maybe frustration. Is there someone else? She hissed, voice shaking. Because the way you push me away, it's like you're disgusted by me. I paused, heart pounding. It took real effort to keep my composure. No, I lied. There's no one else, Clarissa. I'm just not feeling it tonight. Without waiting for her response, I walked out of the room, the echo of her ragged breath trailing behind me. Upstairs, I locked myself in my study, hands shaking. The app on my phone buzzed new messages between Clarissa and Kieran. I skimmed them, each line confirming she was panicking that I might be cheating. Kieran told her to end it with me soon to avoid drama. She responded she couldn't just blow up her family. The irony nearly made me punch a wall. Days slipped by, the house now under a constant cloud of secrecy. Kieran, from what I gleaned, was pressuring Clarissa to choose. Clarissa kept giving him half-answers, claiming she was trying to manage me. Meanwhile, Oliver was tiptoeing around both of us, complaining to Dylan that the tension was like living in a pressure cooker. The phrase stuck in my mind. Pressure cooker. That was exactly how it felt, like the slightest spark would detonate us. One afternoon, after Oliver headed to a friend's, Clarissa cornered me in the kitchen. I deserve to know what's going on, she said, voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. You come and go. You won't touch me. You vanish at odd hours. I'm not stupid, Logan. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Okay. What do you want me to say? My tone was cool. She glared. Admit it. You're messing around with someone. That's why you're punishing me with this distance. You think I can't tell? A humorless chuckle escaped. Why would I bother telling you anything? You just spin it to your liking. Her nostrils flared. For a heartbeat, I thought she might slap me. Instead, she inhaled shakily. Stop turning this on me. I know you're hiding something. With measured calm, I shrugged and walked away. Her furious gaze burned into my back, but I didn't turn around. Little did she know, I was hiding a mountain of evidence that would unravel her entire world. That night, I saw from the logs that she vented to Kieran about our exchange. She wrote, "He won't confirm an affair, but I feel it in my gut. My marriage is hanging by a thread." Kieran's reply was chilling. Then cut it. Leave him. We'll figure out Oliver later. The gall of it. We'll figure out Oliver later. As if my son was a piece of furniture to move around. My fury boiled. though I forced myself to stay collected. The meltdown I was orchestrating would be far more satisfying than any outburst. In the midst of it all, I made time to see Miss Dorsey again, updating her on the fiasco. She told me, "If you want to serve the papers soon, just say the word. But it's entirely up to you how you approach it." I nodded, chewing my lip. "I've got a plan," I murmured, though I didn't share the specifics. The plan involved a major holiday and event that would ensure maximum impact, a day that Clarissa wouldn't forget for the rest of her life. I needed just a little more time to gather the last threads of evidence and finalize the details. Walking out of her office, a steady drizzle fell. I felt the raindrops soak through my jacket, matching the heaviness in my chest. This entire ordeal was draining me, turning me into someone I barely recognized, cunning, vengeful, cold. But I reminded myself that Clarissa fired first. If she wanted an exit from our marriage, I would hold the door wide open and make sure her illusions came crashing down along the way. Later, back at the house, Oliver was studying in his room, and Clarissa was nowhere to be found, probably working late again. I grabbed a soda from the fridge and stared at the quiet kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Soon, very soon, her lies would be laid bare, and the tension strangling our home would finally snap. My phone buzzed. Another message from Miss Dorsey verifying a few details about our shared assets. I typed back, "All correct. Thank you." Then I tucked the device away, glancing at the dark sky outside. The pressure cooker image still danced in my mind. I knew it wouldn't be long before the final confrontation. One flip of a switch and everything would explode. And in the wreckage, I'd ensure Clarissa reaped the consequences of her betrayal. A crisp November breeze swept through the neighborhood, carrying hints of winter. Thanksgiving loomed on the calendar, Oliver's favorite holiday, because our extended family often gathered, and we'd watch football or share old stories around the table. Normally, Clarissa was the one who fussed over the turkey and side dishes. This year, though, everything felt different. Despite the chaos behind closed doors, we agreed to host a modest Thanksgiving dinner. I suspected Clarissa wanted to maintain appearances that all was fine. For me, it was the perfect opportunity to stage a sort of performance. I would act the loving husband in public, letting nobody suspect the storm raging underneath. On Thanksgiving morning, I found Clarissa in the kitchen, prepping vegetables with mechanical precision. Oliver tried to help, but she kept snapping instructions at him. After the third rebuke, he mumbled something about grabbing extra chairs from the garage and fled the tension. I approached, a friendly smile on my face, my best imitation of warmth. "Need any help with that?" She glanced at me warily. "Sure, you can peel these potatoes," she said, voice devoid of real affection. I grabbed a peeler and got to work. The silence between us was thick enough to choke on. After a few minutes, Clarissa spoke under her breath, "You're awfully friendly today." I shrugged, carefully maintaining my calm. It's a holiday, trying to set a good tone. She didn't reply, but I caught a flicker of confusion in her eyes. If only she knew I was counting down the hours until everything shattered. But for Oliver's sake, I put on a show of normalcy, letting her wonder what changed overnight. By afternoon, family members started trickling in. Cassandra arrived with a homemade dessert, greeting me with a cautious hug. She knew some details of my plan, but not the exact timeline. Dylan showed up with his girlfriend, Sabrina, both carrying grocery bags full of last-minute items. The living room soon buzzed with chatter, overshadowing the tension between Clarissa and me. I played the convivial host, offering drinks, catching up with Dylan's college stories, even sharing a laugh with Sabrina about a cooking mishap. Clarissa, to her credit, managed to smile and indulge small talk. Only someone paying close attention would see how forced our interactions were. At one point, I glanced across the living room to see Cassandra studying me, her brow furrowed. She must have sensed the precariousness beneath my pleasant demeanor, but she said nothing, simply giving me a subtle nod that conveyed understanding. Oliver moved among the relatives, brightening slightly with all the activity. He led Sabrina to a side area, showing her family photos on the wall, pictures from past Thanksgivings where Clarissa and I beamed with genuine joy. My chest tightened. Look how far we've fallen, I thought grimly. The afternoon wore on, the turkey roasted in the oven, and the house filled with scents of thyme and melted butter. At some point, I caught Clarissa slipping away into the hallway, phone in hand. Curious, I followed quietly, peeking around the corner. She stood near the coat rack, texting with a tense expression. Likely checking in with Kieran, I assumed. Suddenly, she spotted me. She pressed the phone to her chest, eyes flaring. "Do you need something?" she snapped. I put on my best innocent face. "Just looking for more napkins. Everything okay?" Her cheeks flushed, and she tucked the phone away. "Fine, just a work message." I feigned a neutral smile. "On Thanksgiving? That's dedication." Before she could respond, I turned and walked back to the living room, heart pounding. Even during a holiday with our entire family around, she was still connecting with him. It fueled my determination to see this through. As the day progressed, we finally sat down for the meal. The conversation ebbed and flowed, stories from Cassandra about her job, jokes between Dylan and Oliver, polite banter from Sabrina. Clarissa said the bare minimum, sneaking glances at me every now and then. I responded with a gentle hand on her shoulder or a quick smile if anyone else was watching. The charade was exhausting but necessary. When dessert came out, pumpkin pie, courtesy of Cassandra, I stood to make a brief toast. Lifting my glass of cider, I spoke in a measured tone. "I'm grateful to have you all here today. Family is everything, and despite life's ups and downs, it's comforting to know we have each other's backs. I appreciate all of you more than you know." I turned my gaze to Clarissa for a split second. She blinked, as though unsure how to interpret my words. I toasted, and everyone clinked glasses. For Oliver's sake, I kept it short and sweet, then sat down, letting everyone dig in. Inside, though, I was counting the days until Christmas, my chosen moment. Soon, I reminded myself. By the time the evening wound down, relatives started departing with goodbyes and thanks for the dinner. Dylan offered to stay and help clean up, but I urged him to enjoy the rest of the night with Sabrina. After everyone was gone, Oliver retreated to his room, looking tired but less anxious than before. That left Clarissa and me alone, stacking plates and wiping counters. We worked side by side in silence. Eventually, she spoke, voice subdued. "That was nice. I guess we put on a good show." I let out a soft snort. "Yeah, a real Norman Rockwell painting." She set a plate down, turning toward me. "I'm not sure what your angle is, Logan. Acting like Mr. Perfect Host. You keep pushing me away, but then you do this whole family man routine." Steeling myself, I shrugged. "People expect me to be a family man at Thanksgiving, right? I'm just fulfilling my role." The bitterness in my voice was hard to hide. Clarissa's jaw tightened. "I don't know you anymore," she whispered, more to herself than to me. In a twisted sense, she was right. The Logan she once knew wouldn't be orchestrating a grand public facade. But then again, the Clarissa I married wouldn't be texting a lover in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. We stood there, each undone by the other's betrayal, locked in a stalemate. When she finally turned and left the kitchen, I stared at the half-washed dishes, heart pounding. My staged affection had convinced the family that everything was under control, but Clarissa saw through it just as I saw through her. In the hush of the post-dinner mess, I felt a pang of sorrow for what we used to be. But I shook it off, recalling the plan I'd painstakingly assembled. Stepping out to the garage, I opened a sealed box containing the near-complete evidence binder. Page upon page of her messages with Kieran, the call logs, the snips of bank statements where she used our joint account for suspicious dinners. I placed the final few transcripts I'd printed earlier that day into a clear sleeve. The binder's thickness was almost absurd now, an undeniable testament to her infidelity. A swirl of triumph and dread warred inside me. Nearing the moment, the outline in my mind whispered. I closed the box carefully, exhaling in a shaky rush. Tomorrow I'd compile it into a tidy package, cross-checking every date and detail. Then, when Christmas arrived, I'd wrap it like a gift. The thought made me nauseous and determined at once. We'd just finished one holiday in a painful farce. The next would bring the truth, unavoidable, devastating truth. December days blurred in a haze of final arrangements. Oliver threw himself into exam prep at school, while Clarissa continued her late nights and cryptic calls, apparently convinced I was too busy with my own activities to notice. Little did she know I was finalizing the most significant move of my life. With each passing day, my plan took sharper shape. I would wait until late on Christmas Eve. Clarissa usually went to bed early, citing exhaustion from holiday preparations. As she slept, I'd place everything I'd compiled a neat binder of evidence, copies of text logs, photos, phone records wrapped in crisp gift paper right at her bedside. Tucked inside would be the divorce papers Miss Dorsey prepared. I'd also scheduled deliveries to the key players, her parents Charles and Patricia, Kieran's HR department at the company, even a few of her close friends who had no idea about her secret. The effect would be immediate and seismic. On December 23rd, I spent the morning at a FedEx shipping center, organizing multiple packages. Each contained a smaller binder with carefully chosen highlights of Clarissa's affair. I didn't want to overwhelm them with the entire volume, but just enough so there'd be no doubt of her adultery. My stomach churned as I addressed each label, imagining the shock and scorn that would come her way once they opened these parcels. Once that was done, I stopped by Miss Dorsey's office to collect the final divorce documents complete with all the necessary signatures on my end. She raised an eyebrow at me. "You're sure about this plan?" I nodded, heart pounding. "I've never been more certain. I'll serve her the papers along with the evidence. Overnight, everything will change." She pursed her lips. "It's a dramatic approach, to say the least. But if you feel it's the only way to get closure—" "It is," I said firmly, my throat tight. Back home, I squirreled away the thickest binder in my study, wrapped in plain red paper with a simple gold ribbon. The divorce papers, folded in an envelope, were taped to the inside cover. My phone buzzed with a text from Reggie. "All set for tomorrow night. Let me know if you need any last-minute help." I thanked him. He and Marcus were standing by in case anything went wrong. We'd agreed to meet briefly on Christmas Eve afternoon for a final check-in. When Christmas Eve arrived, the house was oddly quiet. Oliver had gone with friends for a few hours. Clarissa was out shopping, though I suspected it was an excuse to see Kieran. I spent the day pacing the living room, the tree lights blinking. My mind drifted to past Christmases, how Clarissa used to fuss over picking the perfect gifts for me. We'd stay up late wrapping presents for the kids, sipping hot cocoa, exchanging jokes. Now, those memories felt like ancient relics from a different life. Around noon, I met Reggie and Marcus at a coffee shop in a nearby strip mall. The place was bustling with last-minute holiday shoppers, the smell of peppermint mochas heavy in the air. We grabbed a corner booth, talking in low voices. Reggie slid a small USB stick across the table. "Just in case you need an extra copy," he said. "Contains all the digital backups, texts, phone logs, everything." Marcus rested his elbows on the table. "How do you feel, man? This is big." I sipped my coffee, stomach churning. Nervous, honestly, but it has to be done. I'm tired of living in this twisted limbo. They nodded in solidarity. Before we parted ways, Reggie gave me a brief hug. "Good luck, Logan. We'll be around if you need anything." That evening, Clarissa texted to say she'd be home by 8. I forced casualness in my reply. "Okay, see you then." Meanwhile, I placed a smaller gift one that looked like a standard Christmas present beside the thick binder in my study. This was purely for misdirection, a decoy gift if she somehow woke up. The real bombshell was concealed under some spare blankets in the closet. When Clarissa finally arrived, she carried a couple of shopping bags and wore a forced smile. "Last-minute gifts for Oliver," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Busy out there?" "Sure is," I replied, feigning neutrality. "I'll get dinner started." Our conversation was stiff. Over spaghetti and garlic bread, she commented on how this year's holiday felt less festive. I simply nodded. After dinner, Oliver came home, cheerful from spending time with friends, and we decorated sugar cookies. The kitchen brimmed with the sweet smell of frosting, but the tension beneath our forced merriment made my skin crawl. Clarissa and I acted like an ordinary couple, but each glance felt charged with suspicion and dread. Eventually, Oliver went to bed, excited about the next day's festivities. Clarissa yawned. "I'm exhausted," she said, rubbing her forehead. "I think I'll turn in early." I forced a small grin. "Sure, get some rest." My heart pounded at the thought that in just a few hours, I'd unleash the truth. She gave me a strange, lingering look, maybe a flicker of guilt or confusion, then disappeared upstairs. I stayed in the living room, turning off lights and triple-checking the shipping confirmations on my phone. The packages for her parents, siblings, HR, and a few friends were marked for overnight delivery, set to arrive by midday Christmas. Perfect timing. Finally, near midnight, I crept upstairs. The hallway was dimly lit. I peeked into Oliver's room. He was sound asleep. Good. I quietly entered the master bedroom. Clarissa was in a deep slumber, her phone plugged in on the nightstand. My pulse thrummed in my ears. This is it. From the closet, I retrieved the wrapped binder. Gently, I placed it on my side of the bed, making sure the note attached was visible. Merry Christmas. I stood there for a moment, watching the slow rise and fall of her breathing, recalling the many nights we'd fallen asleep together in the comfort of shared hopes. Now, all of that lay shattered under the weight of her betrayal. Slipping out, I moved down the hall to my study. I grabbed the duffel bag I'd packed with essentials clothes, my laptop, important documents. I'd moved most of my keepsakes to Reggie's place already. My heart clenched at leaving my own house this way, but I couldn't stay. This final act would sever me from Clarissa, and I refused to be there when she woke to the truth. Lugging the bag downstairs, I glanced around at the living room, the flickering Christmas tree lights. A pang of sorrow hit me, but also a surge of grim resolve. I left my old phone on the coffee table, along with a business card from Miss Dorsey. That way, Clarissa wouldn't have to guess who orchestrated this. She'd know. Out in the driveway, the cold night air bit at my cheeks. I started my car, pulling away from the house I'd called home for over 2 decades. Lights glimmered in neighboring windows, families likely dozing off in anticipation of a joyful Christmas morning. For me, morning would bring a cataclysmic revelation for Clarissa. The sealed evidence, the divorce papers, a destroyed facade of love. Turning onto the main road, I felt a mix of dread and a twisted sense of liberation. The next time I saw Clarissa, we'd be adversaries in a legal battle, not husband and wife. She had forced this end, and I had meticulously crafted the final blow. I silently said goodbye to the life we once shared, the good memories overshadowed by her betrayal. With every mile I put between myself and that house, the finality sank in deeper. The stage was set. The presents, my dark gifts of truth, would be opened soon enough. Christmas morning would dawn with the kind of surprise no one ever wanted to receive. But that was the cost of her deceit. And so, as the city lights blurred past my windshield, I whispered 2 words to the empty car. It's done. I spent the night of Christmas Eve in a modest motel on the far side of town. The room smelled like stale coffee, and the neon sign outside blinked against the curtains all night. I barely slept, my mind reeling with what I'd set into motion. By dawn, I was up, pacing the fraying carpet. Somewhere across the city, Clarissa would be waking to a meticulously wrapped binder and a set of divorce papers. Her parents, siblings, and even her HR department would receive their packages soon after. Around mid-morning, I parked in front of a small diner, phone in hand, waiting for the inevitable calls. My stomach churned with both anticipation and dread. At 10:12 a.m., my phone buzzed for the first time. Cassandra. I answered quietly. Hey, sis. Her breath crackled on the line. Logan Holy. She's going ballistic. I just got off the phone with Clarissa, and she knows everything. She's freaking out. Her parents called me too. They're practically in shock. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. Yeah, it was time they knew. Cassandra lowered her voice. Look, I won't say I'm sad for her because, well, she did this to you. But she's in a tailspin. She said you left her a giant binder of proof. She's been calling me non-stop, asking where you are. My jaw tightened. I'm not telling anyone where I am. Cassandra sighed. Understood. Anyway, you did it. This is huge, Logan. Everyone's reeling. When we hung up, I simply stared at the black screen, trying to steady my heartbeat. The moment I'd planned for so long was unfolding. It was oddly anticlimactic to be sitting in a diner parking lot, hearing the news secondhand, but relief mixed with lingering sadness. After more than 2 decades of marriage, I'd just publicly exposed Clarissa's duplicity. About 30 minutes later, my phone rang again, an unknown number. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. Hello? I said cautiously. An authoritative voice responded, Mr. Reeves? This is Mr. Garcia. Director of Human Resources at Clarissa's firm. I received something this morning. I'd like to verify authenticity. My pulse quickened. I'm listening. He cleared his throat. We have a strict policy against inter-office relationships. The documents you sent, including text transcripts, phone logs, and personal statements, strongly suggest Clarissa and Kieran Collins were engaging in an extramarital affair on company time. Is that correct? I forced a calm tone. Yes, sir. Everything in that binder is authentic. She was cheating with Kieran for months. Silence weighed on the line before Mr. Garcia spoke again. I can't divulge much about internal decisions, but rest assured we take these matters seriously. I appreciate your cooperation. Then he ended the call. I stared at the phone, a swirl of satisfaction and guilt coursing through me. So it had begun public outcry, exactly as I intended. Clarissa's world was toppling, and I was the one who struck the first blow. A little before noon, another incoming call. Clarissa's father, Charles. Hesitation clenched my gut, but I answered. Logan, he said gruffly. I don't even know what to say. I pictured his stern face, eyebrows knit in disappointment. For decades, he'd been almost a second father to me. I'm sorry, Charles, I said, voice tight, but you understand why I had to do this. He inhaled sharply. You could have told us without destroying her. The binder arrived, and Patricia nearly fainted. It's so explicit. She's humiliated. She humiliated me, I snapped, then took a breath. I'm not going to argue. She chose Kieran. She lied for months, and I have the proof. I'm done being the victim. He was silent a long moment. We don't condone what she did, but she's our daughter. This is devastating. She's talking about wanting to fix things, but my God, Logan, you really left no stone unturned. I felt an ache in my chest, recalling the day we told Charles and Patricia we were getting married. They'd welcomed me with open arms. She can't fix what she broke, I whispered. I'm sorry if this hurts you both, but I have to protect myself. He let out a tired sigh. I understand. Just whatever happens next, please consider Oliver. He's the one caught in the middle. My throat tightened. Believe me, I'm thinking about him every second. Charles mumbled a goodbye, and the line went dead. I dropped by a convenience store to grab coffee, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. My phone continued buzzing, friends, acquaintances, family members. Some called to express shock, others to confirm details. I avoided Clarissa's direct calls or texts entirely, letting them go to voicemail. My mother left a clipped message congratulating me on finally standing up for yourself, and Cassandra texted periodic updates. The effect was precisely as I'd orchestrated, a public condemnation of Clarissa's affair. Around 3 in the afternoon, I got a text from Cassandra. Oliver is with Dylan now. He's safe. Clarissa's been trying to see him, but he wants to be with his brother. I felt a surge of relief, glad my sons found refuge away from the maelstrom. 12 hours into Christmas Day, I was exhausted, drained by the emotional toll of hearing everyone's reactions. The furious satisfaction that initially bolstered me began to wane, replaced by a hollow sadness. I thought of all the Christmases Clarissa and I had shared, the illusions of love we once maintained. Now it was undone, irreparably so. Late in the evening, my phone buzzed once more. Cassandra again. Hey, I answered quietly, bracing myself. She took a moment before speaking. So, I just spoke with Clarissa's friend, Harriet. She said Clarissa is in meltdown mode. She's apparently been calling your old phone, the house phone, even messaging me to find your address. Harriet's never seen her like this. I exhaled, closing my eyes. Where is she now? She's at home. Harriet said Clarissa's so distraught she hasn't left the bedroom all day, just sobbing, blaming you for blindsiding her. Blindsiding her? A bitter laugh escaped. She blindsided me with an affair. I just let the facts speak for themselves. Cassandra's sigh crackled softly. I'm not defending her, Logan. Just giving you the update. People are furious with her. The workplace drama is huge, and she's reeling. This is truly an earth-shaking reveal. I sat in the front seat of my car, the night sky a blanket of quiet darkness around me. Thanks for letting me know, I said. But I'm not reaching out to her, not now. Cassandra understood. All right. I just wanted you to be aware. Take care, Logan. When I hung up, I sank into my seat, drained. The avalanche had begun, and Clarissa was buried under it. I took no pleasure in her suffering, but neither did I regret my choice. She'd set this in motion the day she gave herself to Kieran behind my back. Now, all I could do was watch from the sidelines as her life imploded. I found a temporary rental apartment a few days after Christmas, tucked away in a quiet complex. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal, and the fridge nearly empty. Yet the emptiness felt oddly comforting, no reminders of Clarissa, no shared memories lurking in every corner. I arrived with a suitcase of clothes, my laptop, and a restless mind. Despite my attempts to detach, calls and messages still poured in. The biggest bombshell came from Marcus on a crisp morning just before New Year's. We met at a coffee shop, my new go-to haunt. He strode inside, breath visible in the cold air. "Logan, you're not going to believe it," Marcus said, sliding into the seat across from me. He blew into his hands for warmth. "Kieran got fired, officially." I felt a grim spark of satisfaction. "When?" "Yesterday, apparently. My buddy from Clarissa's company told me the HR department concluded their investigation. Kieran violated multiple policies, plus he used corporate resources for personal rendezvous. They cut him loose on the spot." My heart pounded. It was one thing to anticipate the fallout, another to see it actually happen. "So, Clarissa?" Marcus shook his head. "She's on indefinite leave while they decide if she's also complicit. There's talk they might let her go too, but she's been there a long time. Might try to salvage her job. Either way, Kieran's done." I took a long sip of black coffee, absorbing the news. My carefully planned evidence binder had done its work. "Serves him right," I muttered, recalling the messages where he encouraged Clarissa to ditch me. Marcus nodded slowly. "He practically bragged about the affair, and now it's backfired. Word around the office is that he's persona non grata. Some employees are outraged, especially the older crowd, who see him as destroying a marriage of 20-some years. He paused. "You sure you're okay?" I stared at the tabletop, swirling the coffee. I'm numb, mostly. This is what I wanted, right? Ruin them both. But it doesn't feel as triumphant as I expected. Marcus's eyes softened. "Because you're not a cruel man, Logan. You're just hurt." I sighed, pushing away the coffee cup. "Maybe. Either way, it's done. He's out." Over the next few days, I heard rumors that Kieran's personal life was spiraling, too. Cassandra texted me that his devout parents, whom I'd also mailed a smaller binder, had virtually disowned him. He was couch-surfing at a friend's place, trying to find a new job. One evening, my phone pinged with a strange number. The text read, "We need to talk. Please." No signature, but I knew it had to be Kieran. I stared at the screen a moment before blocking the number. The last thing I wanted was to hear his pleas or apologies. Meanwhile, Clarissa's meltdown continued to ripple through our social circle. A few mutual friends severed ties with her, appalled by how she'd deceived me. Others tried to stay neutral, but the weight of my evidence left little room for sympathy. Many sided with me, reaching out to see how I was coping. One friend, Trisha, left a voicemail. "Logan, I had no idea Clarissa was doing this. I'm so sorry. If you need anything, let me know." I appreciated the solidarity, but it also reminded me that my marriage was now public spectacle. Everyone had a front row seat to the collapse. Oliver and Dylan were still at Dylan's apartment, from what Cassandra told me. The boys were grappling with the news in their own ways. Dylan was furious with Clarissa, refusing to even speak to her, while Oliver was hurt, confused, and torn about the family dividing. Cassandra confirmed they were safe, though, which was all I could ask for in the moment. Amid all this upheaval, I found myself reflecting on Kieran's downfall more than I expected. Part of me felt a twinge of pity. He was only 27, 5 years older than Dylan. He'd thrown away his promising career for an affair with a married woman. A large chunk of me, however, still burned with resentment. He had knowingly participated in wrecking my marriage, mocking me from the sidelines. One chilly afternoon, while scrolling through messages on my phone, I found a missed call from an unfamiliar number. A voicemail icon glowed. My gut told me it might be Kieran again, or possibly Clarissa, but I pressed play anyway. A shaky male voice crackled through the speaker. "Logan, listen. It's Kieran. I know you hate me, and I probably deserve it. But I have nowhere to go. My parents kicked me out. I just... A pause. I'm sorry, man. What we did was wrong, but it wasn't all me. She never mind. I get it if you don't want to talk. Just please. If you ever can forgive me or want to meet, call me. I ended the voicemail, my stomach twisting. The nerve. He'd lost his job, his family's support, possibly Clarissa's loyalty, too. Now he was floundering. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Actions have consequences, kid. I briefly considered returning his call, but just as quickly dismissed it. He wasn't my problem to fix. That night, lying in the strange bed of my rented apartment, I stared at the ceiling, replaying the events that led us here. Clarissa's secret calls, my own months of gathering intel, the holiday reveal that cost Kieran his job and possibly his family. This was the revenge I had meticulously engineered. Still, my chest felt heavy. Winning didn't taste sweet, more like ash. The next morning, I woke to a text from Cassandra. Clarissa's indefinite leave turned into a suspension. She might be next to get fired. Harriet says she's been trying to salvage her position, but management is furious. I set my phone down on the nightstand, heart pounding. So Clarissa was inching closer to losing everything as well. A murmur of satisfaction flickered through me, but overshadowed by an odd sorrow. For 23 years, we built a life together. Now she was one step from total ruin. Still, remembering how she lied with a straight face, telling me she was just working late, steeled my resolve. She chose Kieran, risking our family and stability. My retaliation might have been harsh, but it was what she'd earned. I stepped outside into the crisp winter air, hugging my coat tight. The sunrise glowed pink over the horizon, and for a moment, I let the cold breeze clear my head. Kieran was no longer the golden boy at her workplace, and soon Clarissa might share that fate. The wheels were turning, unstoppable now. Maybe I'd pity them later once I was free of the anger, but for now, I let the consequences unfold. I headed for my car, realizing I needed to plan what came next for me personally. My vow had been to destroy the affair, not necessarily to watch them suffer indefinitely. Yet as I drove toward an empty day, I couldn't deny that part of me craved seeing them both face the reality of what they'd done. Perhaps I'd done enough already, or maybe not. Pulling into a vacant lot, I powered off my phone for a while. The sun broke through the clouds, and I found myself breathing deeper, the cold air invigorating. Kieran had fallen from grace in a spectacular way, exiled by his own parents, unemployed and friendless. Clarissa teetered on the same edge. My plan was succeeding, but if this was victory, it felt heartbreakingly hollow, leaving me alone in a quiet car, reflecting on a future that no longer included the wife I once adored. A frigid January wind rattled the windows of my rental apartment. Days had passed since the explosive Christmas reveal. I'd fallen into an odd routine, waking up early to scan my phone for updates, sipping lukewarm coffee, then wandering aimlessly through the city to clear my head. I was in limbo, still grappling with the aftermath of what I'd set in motion. I soon learned that Clarissa had been suspended from her job. The text from Cassandra confirmed it. She was forcibly taking leave until the final HR decision. Meanwhile, a number of Clarissa's close friends cut ties. The affair and the humiliating evidence I provided left no room for denial. Harriet, a mutual acquaintance, apparently tried to defend Clarissa at first, but the sheer volume of proof shut down any argument. Occasionally, Harriet texted me politely, asking if I would talk to Clarissa. I ignored those messages. My ex-wife's spiral wasn't my responsibility. One gray afternoon, Tricia, another friend who remained neutral, called. Her voice was hushed. "Logan, I just visited Clarissa. She's in a bad state. She says no one will speak to her. Her parents are furious. Her siblings are disappointed, and she's been calling you nonstop with no reply." I gritted my teeth. "I changed my number for a reason, Tricia." She let out a shaky exhale. "Yes. Well, she's not doing well. She's depressed, locked in the house most days. Her fridge is almost empty. She's shut out from work and society. People gossip, some pity her, most condemn her." A pause. "Are you sure you want to keep ignoring her, please?" A swirl of conflicting emotions rose in me. "Tricia, you have no idea what she put me through. She destroyed our marriage for a fling with a younger guy. This is the natural consequence." Tricia's voice softened. "I'm not excusing her behavior, But she's a mess, Logan. She asked me to see if you'd at least speak with her. She's claiming she never wanted it to go this far. A bitter laugh escaped me. Yeah, well, it went that far the second she betrayed me. I'm not her lifeline anymore. Trisha didn't push further. She simply said, "All right, I understand," and hung up. I stared at the blank screen, a knot in my chest. Even after everything, I couldn't switch off the memory of loving Clarissa, the mother of my children, the woman I once believed in. Yet the rage and betrayal were stronger. She was on her own now. Despite my attempts to isolate, news of Clarissa's struggles trickled in. Harriet, in a last-ditch effort, left me a voicemail. "She's truly alone, Logan. I'm about the only friend she has left, and even I can't handle her guilt and sorrow. Please, if you can find it in your heart." I deleted the message. My eyes burned with tears I refused to shed. Clarissa had made her bed. This was the harsh reality she created. I channeled that turmoil into meeting with my attorney, Miss Evelyn Dorsey, for an update on the divorce filing. She welcomed me into a quiet conference room, flipping through the documents. "The process is moving," she noted, adjusting her glasses. "Given the at-fault stipulation and the overwhelming evidence, your position is strong. Clarissa hasn't even contested. It's almost as if she's resigned." I ran a hand over my face, exhaustion weighing me down. "So, how soon until it's finalized?" Evelyn checked a small calendar. "Barring complications, a few more months. Sometimes these things get delayed, but if she doesn't fight it, it could be even quicker. We'll see." I nodded, heart heavy. "All right." She offered a subdued smile. "I know this is tough, but you're doing the right thing for yourself, Logan." I swallowed the lump in my throat, thinking of Clarissa's isolation, how she sat in our old home alone, possibly half starving if Harriet's concerns were valid. "Thank you," I managed, trying not to let pity derail me. Oliver, meanwhile, remained with Dylan. They were forging a routine of their own, visiting friends, going about day-to-day life. Dylan texted me occasionally. "Still mad at Mom, but I hate seeing her like this. Let me know if you need me." Oliver was quieter, only sending short messages about school or practical updates. They both refused to stay at the old house, leaving Clarissa even more isolated. One late evening, I decided to drive by that house, my old home, for reasons I couldn't quite explain. Snow dusted the sidewalks, reflecting under the streetlights. I parked at the curb, engine off, just watching. The house looked dark, only a small glow in the living room window. My chest tightened with memories. The time Clarissa and I painted the porch, the backyard barbecues with the boys, the random nights we'd dance in the kitchen to no music at all. Now it felt haunted by regrets. My phone vibrated with a text from Cassandra. "Heard you're near the old place? You okay?" That meant someone saw my car, maybe a neighbor who recognized me. I shook my head, typed back, "Just passing by." Then I started the engine and left, not daring to approach the door. A few days later, Cassandra and I met in person at a quiet bookstore cafe. I sipped peppermint tea while she studied my face. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," she said softly. "I'm just dealing with the fallout," I replied, swirling the tea with a plastic spoon. "You said Clarissa's cut off from almost everyone?" Cassandra nodded. "Yes, she tried calling Mom and Dad, but they're furious. She used their wedding anniversary gift to pay for part of a trip with Kieran. That came out in the binder you sent. They feel betrayed." My jaw clenched. I didn't realize that detail would wound them so much. She reached over to squeeze my hand. "You're not to blame. She did those things. You just exposed it." Then Cassandra's voice dropped. "Logan, Harriet's worried Clarissa might do something drastic. She's apparently not eating well, she's depressed, and any attempt to talk sense into her ends in tears or anger." I let out a shaky breath. "I know, but I can't swoop in and rescue her. That defeats the entire point of holding her accountable." Cassandra's gaze was sympathetic. "I get it, I do. Just be cautious. Sometimes despair drives people to extremes." We fell quiet, each lost in our own thoughts. The bookstore's warmth felt incongruent with the icy turmoil in my chest. A flicker of guilt nagged at me. The success of my revenge had reduced Clarissa to a reclusive, miserable figure. But the memory of her betrayal, her late-night calls with Kieran, The sneers at my boring life kept me from relenting. She caused this. That night, back at my apartment, I browsed social media out of morbid curiosity. Clarissa's profile sat mostly abandoned, no new posts since the scandal. A handful of older photos featuring me and the boys still lingered, battered by critical comments from acquaintances who knew the truth. I quickly logged off, not wanting to drown in the negativity. My phone lit up with a text from Harriet. "She won't answer my calls. I'm scared for her. Please, Logan, do something." A wave of anger pulsed through me. Why was Harriet placing responsibility on me? Clarissa had Harriet if she wanted help. She could open the door to her friend. This wasn't my burden anymore. I ignored the text, curling up on the lumpy couch in the small living room. The television droned with some late-night show, but I couldn't focus. Clarissa's isolation weighed on my conscience, even though I refused to admit it. My eyes roamed across the blank walls, the scant furniture. I'd created this new life to protect myself, yet I felt like a ghost in my own existence. Eventually, I fell into a restless sleep, haunted by images of Clarissa alone in that big house, the lights off, regret swallowing her whole. The satisfaction of revenge remained, but overshadowed by a new, unsettling awareness. I was capable of inflicting true destruction on someone I once loved. And that realization left a hollow ache, even as I reminded myself. She brought this upon herself. It happened on a frigid night in mid-January, a call that shattered my uneasy calm. I was in my apartment's tiny kitchen, trying to make a quick dinner when my phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed a name I hadn't seen for years. Harriet. Something in my gut twisted. I answered warily. "Hello?" Her voice trembled, borderline hysterical. "Oh God, Logan, I found her. She tried to—" She broke off, sobbing. "Clarissa tried. She took a bunch of pills. It's serious. I'm at the hospital now. They're pumping her stomach." My blood turned to ice. My fork clattered onto the countertop. "What?" "She was barely conscious when I got to the house," Harriet continued, voice thick with tears. "I only checked because she wasn't answering texts. I found her collapsed in the bedroom, bottles everywhere. Please, can you come?" I clutched the phone, heart racing. The woman I once shared a life with had attempted to end her own. Shock and dread warred in my mind. Harriet, I don't think I can. Logan, she's in ICU. Charles and Patricia are here begging for you. Oliver and Dylan are on their way. Just please, she asked for you when they brought her in. She was delirious, but she kept saying your name." Harriet's voice cracked. My throat tightened until I could barely breathe. Despite my anger, the thought of Clarissa on the brink of death carved a hole in my chest. I squeezed my eyes shut, remembering Cassandra's warning about people hitting extremes. "What hospital?" I forced out, pen in hand. She gave me the name, voice trembling. "I know you're angry, but she might not make it through the night. Please." After hanging up, I slumped against the wall, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. My vengeance had led Clarissa into utter isolation, and in her despair she'd tried to end it all. The moral lines I'd drawn blurred. Did I truly want her dead? No. Yet I'd orchestrated her public humiliation, fully aware she might break. But did that make me responsible? She chose her affair. She chose deception. This was the consequence, wasn't it? My insides twisted with contradictory emotions, anger, guilt, sorrow, even a stubborn refusal to take blame. Still, Clarissa lay in a hospital, clinging to life. Gathering what composure I had, I rushed out of the apartment. Snow fell in light flurries as I drove through darkened streets. My mind raced with 1,000 possible outcomes. At one point, I almost turned back, telling myself she wasn't my concern anymore. But a sharper voice inside me retorted, "She's the mother of your children." That truth propelled me forward. When I arrived at the hospital, fluorescent lights buzzed in a sterile lobby. Harriet sat in a corner, face blotchy from crying. She jumped up upon seeing me, relief and confusion warring in her eyes. "Thank God you came." I swallowed the knot in my throat. "Where is she?" "ICU, second floor. They're stabilizing her. She was in cardiac distress from the overdose." Harriet hesitated. "Her parents are up there with the doctors. They don't know how to feel about seeing you." I met her gaze, mind churning. "Well, they wanted me here, right?" Harriet didn't confirm or deny, but she led me to the elevator. Outside the ICU, I spotted Charles and Patricia huddled together. Their faces were etched with anguish, far older than I remembered. Patricia's gaze lifted, trembling with tears. Charles stood stiffly, lips pressed tight. "You showed up," Charles muttered, voice thick. I stuffed my shaking hands into my coat pockets. I wasn't going to, but Harriet called. My words died in my throat. None of us knew what to say. Patricia's composure shattered first. She burst into quiet sobs. Charles wrapped an arm around her, glaring at me with a conflicted expression. "She's being treated. The doctors think she'll pull through, but it's touch and go." The heaviness in my chest felt crushing. "I never wanted this," I managed. "Yes, I wanted her to face the consequences, but not—" I trailed off, unable to say suicide. Charles nodded slowly, tears brimming in his eyes, too. "She did this to herself. We're not blaming you, Logan. But it's a fine line, isn't it?" His voice trembled with restrained emotion. She was in a dark place. She saw no way out. Behind them, Harriet sat in a plastic chair, wringing her hands. I drew a ragged breath. I knew many would suspect I'd driven Clarissa over the edge. Part of me raged at that insinuation she was the cheater, but another part, seeing the raw agony in her parents, felt a pang of guilt. My planned exposure had battered her with shame, job suspension, isolation from friends. She cracked under the weight. The ICU doors swung open, and a nurse in scrubs approached. She spoke quietly to Charles and Patricia, updating them on Clarissa's condition. My stomach churned listening to words like critical, overdose, respiratory support. This was no dramatic rumor. Clarissa truly hovered between life and death. Finally, Charles turned to me. "If she stabilizes, we'll be able to see her in short visits. Don't know if she'll ask for you, but if she does—" He trailed off, studying me with sorrow and perhaps a hint of blame. I nodded, swallowing hard. "I'll wait," I said, voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure if I truly wanted to see her, but the finality of death demanded I stay. Hours crept by in stifling tension. Harriet dozed in a chair, Charles paced the corridor, and Patricia stared blankly at the floor. I listened to the beeping machines down the hall, each chirp a reminder that Clarissa teetered on the brink. Dylan and Oliver were on their way. Cassandra had texted me. Eventually, a doctor emerged, telling us Clarissa was somewhat stabilized. She'd need psychiatric care if she survived the initial crisis. My shoulders slumped in relief. Patricia asked if I wanted to see Clarissa first, but I shook my head, stepping back. "She's your daughter, you go." I couldn't face her battered form in that bed, not yet. A while later, Harriet quietly informed me Clarissa had asked if I was there. My heart clenched. She wanted me. The nurse, overhearing, said Clarissa was too weak for extended visits, but I could step in briefly. I stood outside the ICU doors, a whirlwind of regret and anger swirling in my chest. Did I even have the right to approach her now? She'd betrayed me, I'd humiliated her, and now she'd nearly ended her life. For a moment I hovered, torn. But then I remembered how she'd once been my partner, the mother of my sons. I took a shaky breath, hand on the door handle. Harriet's eyes were on me, urging me forward. Yet as I pictured Clarissa's broken figure, tubes and monitors, I felt paralyzed by conflicting emotions. Rage for her betrayal, pity for her self-destruction, fear of my own role in pushing her there. "Logan," Harriet whispered, "are you going in?" I swallowed, jaw set. The truth was, I still couldn't. Something inside me recoiled at the idea of offering comfort. All the memories of her text messages to Kieran, the nights she lied to my face, blazed in my mind. She lay in the ICU because of her own choices, and yes, perhaps my vengeance magnified her fall, but I wasn't prepared to step in as her rescuer. "No," I said, voice shaking. I can't." Harriet's expression folded in on itself. She looked ready to plead again, but a nurse ushered her aside. I turned on my heel, heading toward the elevator. The corridor lights buzzed overhead, intensifying the pounding in my skull. Clarissa was alive but fragile, facing a long road of psychiatric evaluation and guilt, and I felt no desire to console her. She'd reaped what she sowed. Out in the parking lot, I sucked in lungfuls of freezing air, ignoring the tears pricking my eyes. My phone pinged with a call Charles. I rejected it, not wanting another confrontation. I knew they wanted me to show some compassion, but I had none left to give. As I slid into my car, the engine's hum vibrated through my numb limbs. Clarissa's near-death experience didn't erase her betrayal or our broken vows. If anything, it deepened the chasm, reminding me how far apart we'd drifted. She might have survived this attempt, but our marriage was long gone. I drove off, heart pounding, leaving the hospital behind me. The vow I made to myself still stood. I owe her nothing. Even the threat of her demise couldn't resurrect my forgiveness. In the gloom of the city lights, I recognized that our final break had come, not in a violent scream but in a hush of fatal intent. Clarissa made her bed, and I refused to lie in it with her anymore. In the weeks following Clarissa's suicide attempt, I discovered that rebuilding my life wasn't as simple as walking away from the past. The emotional wreckage she left behind and the part I played in exposing her affair hung over me like a heavy fog. I was living alone in that bare-bones apartment I'd rented, waking up to a silence so deep it sometimes felt suffocating. My mornings started the same way. I'd brew a cup of coffee and stare out the window at the neighboring complex, watching people hustle to work or jog with their dogs. It was a weird sense of normalcy that clashed with the turmoil in my head. The guilt I resisted acknowledging kept seeping through the cracks of my anger. About a month in, Cassandra convinced me to try therapy. She set me up with a local counselor named Dr. Naomi Elliott, a soft-spoken woman in her mid-40s with a gentle demeanor. At first, I balked at the idea airing my darkest thoughts to a stranger seemed pointless, but Cassandra insisted I give it a shot, so I found myself sitting in Dr. Elliott's cozy office, flipping through my own mental clutter. Dr. Elliott began each session by inviting me to talk about how I felt in the present, rather than focusing on the past. That was harder than it sounded. I wanted to rant about Clarissa, or the affair, or how I believed my revenge was justified. But Dr. Elliott kept guiding me back. How did I feel right now? The answer: I felt hollow, haunted by my own resentments. She encouraged me to write in a journal, capturing fleeting thoughts or nightmares. Slowly, I realized the line between heartbreak and anger was thinner than I'd imagined. Meanwhile, Oliver was also starting therapy. Dylan texted me occasionally, updating me on his brother's progress. Oliver struggled with trust. His mother's betrayal and subsequent breakdown left him questioning relationships in general. He seldom spoke to Clarissa, who remained withdrawn at home, not fully recovered from her overdose. Dylan told me Oliver was doing better academically, but was quieter than ever. The guilt of my orchestrated destruction sometimes pricked at me. Had I inadvertently hurt Oliver more than I intended? Still, I couldn't overlook the relief that came with living apart from Clarissa. No more hushed phone calls or tiptoeing around each other's lies. The tension that once strangled our home had evaporated, replaced by a solitary emptiness, but emptiness can be strangely calming. I found myself able to think of the future without that constant pounding in my skull. One afternoon after therapy, I ventured into a local park. The grass was dull green, peppered with bits of leftover snow from a recent flurry. I walked aimlessly, letting the cool breeze ruffle my jacket. In the distance, I saw a father and son tossing a football. It reminded me of times I played catch with Oliver, back before our family started to fracture. An ache settled in my chest. Maybe one day we'd get back to that closeness, but I had no illusions it would be soon. Therapy with Dr. Elliott introduced me to the concept of radical acceptance, recognizing what I couldn't change and focusing on what I could. That included reevaluating my own motivations for revenge. I still believed Clarissa needed to face consequences, but I admitted there were moments I'd taken some grim pleasure in it. Dark corners of my mind had whispered, "Make her suffer like she made you suffer." That revelation stung, forcing me to realize I wasn't just a wounded husband. I'd become an avenger, and it was a persona that didn't fit comfortably anymore. At the same time, I noticed I wasn't waking up every day burning with anger. That fury was fading, replaced by a quiet sadness. I told Dr. Elliott that I felt like I was in mourning not for Clarissa the cheater, but for the wife I once loved, the woman I'd spent over 2 decades with. Even after betrayal, a history that long doesn't just vanish overnight. Grief is messy and doesn't follow a neat timeline. Oliver's progress in therapy mirrored some of my own revelations. From Dylan's updates, I learned Oliver admitted to feeling lied to by both parents, Clarissa for her affair, me for the way I'd hidden my plan. But he was opening up more to his counselor and to Dylan, gradually letting go of some of his rage. Knowing he was on a path to healing allowed me to breathe a little easier at night. Meanwhile, I tried reconnecting with daily tasks that once brought me peace. Cooking simple meals instead of ordering takeout, organizing my new living space, though it was still sparse, and sporadically returning to light martial arts drills when my knee allowed it. My knee injury had improved, though the occasional stiffness reminded me of the accident that set so many events in motion. Little by little, I felt a sense of cautious calm. Yes, my marriage lay in ruins, but the toxicity had lifted. In quiet moments, I'd journal about the emotional void I felt, how the house I once shared with Clarissa was sold, how she was nearly a stranger to me now. Doctor. Elliot's voice echoed in my mind each time I wrote, "Focus on your present emotional needs, not the past illusions." Easier said than done, but I tried. Of course, not everything was smooth. My mother phoned from time to time, praising me for standing up to Clarissa, but occasionally pointing out that maybe you could be a bit kinder now that she's broken. I'd bite my tongue, wrestling with whether I owed Clarissa any mercy. The answer remained elusive. As January melted into February, I found a semblance of routine. Wake up, do my exercises, head to work, check in with Dylan about Oliver, avoid any news on Clarissa's condition, then meet Dr. Elliot once a week. My nights were lonely, but also free of the suffocating weight of suspicion. Better lonely than betrayed, I told myself, whenever a pang of longing gnawed at me. One day, while rummaging through a box of old belongings, I found a photograph of me and Clarissa from our honeymoon, her smile radiant, her eyes full of adoration. I studied it for a long moment before tucking it away. That life was gone. A new one was forming, piece by piece, grounded in therapy sessions and small personal triumphs like cooking a decent meal or finishing a day's work without spiraling into bitterness. Step by step, I was rebuilding. In those fleeting moments, I even dared to believe I might discover something like peace again. "I'm not there yet," I noted in my journal, "but I'm no longer drowning." That was enough for now. It was a crisp afternoon in late February when Eloise reappeared in my life like a soft glow piercing the twilight. I'd just stepped out of Dr. Elliot's office, my weekly therapy session had ended on a somewhat hopeful note, and was heading toward the parking lot when I heard someone call my name. "Logan, is that you?" I turned to see Eloise, bundled in a thick coat, hair rustling in the breeze. We'd been friends long before I met Clarissa, but we'd lost regular contact over the years. I recognized the same kind eyes and warm smile, though a faint sadness lingered in them. "Eloise?" I managed, blinking in surprise. "What are you doing here?" She hesitated, then lifted her jacket sleeve, revealing a medical bracelet. "I had an appointment too, different counselor. Been dealing with some personal stuff." A rueful smile crossed her lips. "Small world, huh?" My heart clenched. The last time we'd seen each other face to face was well before my marriage exploded, probably at some mutual friends gathering. I recalled how she'd always been a good listener, albeit a bit shy about her own problems. We walked side by side across the parking lot, conversation tentative at first. She asked how I was holding up, clearly aware of the scandal with Clarissa but not prying. We ended up at a nearby cafe, the kind with retro booths and cheap coffee. Sitting across from her, I noticed faint lines of stress around her eyes. She admitted she was in therapy after a painful breakup. "I guess heartbreak is going around," she joked softly, though there was genuine hurt in her voice. I found myself opening up more than I expected. Maybe it was the familiarity of an old friend, or maybe I'd grown used to honesty through therapy. I told her a condensed version of what happened Clarissa's affair, my slow-burn revenge, the final meltdown. Eloise listened, nodding in quiet sympathy. When I finished, she placed a gentle hand over mine. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her expression earnest. "I wish I could have been there for you sooner." Her kindness chipped away at my guarded stance. Since I'd left Clarissa, I hadn't really let myself feel anything like tenderness. But sitting in that booth, sipping mediocre coffee, Eloise's presence felt like a calm harbor after a storm. We didn't delve into deep details about her breakup. She said it was messy, but she'd rather focus on the present, echoing Dr. Eliot's favorite line. So we stuck to catching up on small joys, like the time she tried a painting class or how I'd started cooking more. Before we parted, Eloise gave me a soft smile. "I'd love to see you again if you're open to it. We both have healing to do." I paused, some old part of me flickering with memories of how she'd always been supportive, even when Clarissa and I were newlyweds. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'd like that." In the following weeks, Eloise and I developed a gentle pattern of contact. We texted occasionally, short messages like "Hope therapy went well today," or "How's your knee holding up?" It was nothing overly intense, just small check-ins that made me realize how starved I was for healthy connection. She never overstepped, never pried about Clarissa or demanded I elaborate on my bitterness. Instead, she encouraged me to focus on daily life, one step at a time. One Saturday, we met at a local farmer's market. The crisp morning air smelled of fresh produce and pastries. Eloise giggled as she sampled artisanal cheeses, and I found myself laughing along an emotion I hadn't genuinely felt in a while. We strolled through aisles of handmade crafts, petting rescue dogs at a charity booth. The world felt oddly normal, despite the chaos that had been my life for months. Over lunch at a nearby food stall, she asked about Oliver and Dylan. I explained that Oliver was gradually warming up to me again, thanks to therapy and some heartfelt talks. Dylan was protective of his younger brother, but also supportive of my steps toward emotional stability. Eloise nodded, her eyes shining with empathy. "They're lucky to have you," she said. I swallowed back a wave of emotion. I wish I'd shielded them better from the fallout. She reached out and squeezed my hand briefly. "You did what you had to do. No one's perfect in these situations." That simple gesture ignited a flutter in my chest. Part of me worried I was mixing gratitude with something deeper. Yet the more time I spent with Eloise, the more I felt a softness returning to me, a reminder that not all relationships were built on lies and betrayal. One evening, after a particularly draining therapy session, I found myself texting Eloise, "Mind if I call?" feeling heavy. She replied almost instantly, "Of course." Moments later, her voice filled my ear through the phone. She listened patiently as I unpacked a wave of regret over how merciless I'd been with Clarissa, wrestling with my guilt for ignoring her pleas after her overdose. Eloise didn't judge. She validated my conflicting feelings, saying that heartbreak can twist us into unrecognizable versions of ourselves. "Sometimes," she said softly, "we do things out of pain that we never imagined we'd be capable of, but it doesn't define who we truly are. It's part of healing to accept that darkness and learn from it." My throat felt tight. "I appreciate that," I murmured. "It's just so complicated. Part of me doesn't regret it. Part of me feels monstrous." Her silence was gentle, allowing me space to breathe. "Logan," she finally said, "I don't see a monster. I see someone who was badly hurt and tried to protect himself. It's okay to feel both proud and ashamed. You're human." Hanging up that night, I realized just how much her understanding meant. It was like a flashlight guiding me through my own moral shadowland. I didn't see a romantic future with Eloise yet. I was still entangled in the divorce process, but something about her presence gave me hope that I wasn't doomed to remain locked in bitterness forever. By the first week of March, Eloise and I had begun meeting for coffee regularly, sometimes twice a week if our schedules allowed. She'd share tidbits about her own therapy progress, how she'd learned to set boundaries after her toxic relationship. I confided that I was still adjusting to single life, unsure of my identity without Clarissa's shadow. We laughed sometimes at the irony, two damaged souls forging a tentative friendship over pastries and cappuccinos. I recalled how, in our younger days, Eloise used to tease me about my overly serious demeanor. She'd push me to loosen up, try new hobbies. Now, it was me encouraging her to sign up for a yoga class she'd been eyeing. In a world that felt uncertain, these small acts of caring for each other became a lifeline. For the first time since leaving Clarissa, I found myself looking forward to something beyond pure survival. Each time I saw Eloise's name on my phone, or glimpsed her smile across a cafe table, I felt a quiet warmth. Friends, I told myself. We were just friends reconnecting after years apart. But a part of me wondered if, once the divorce was final and the dust settled, I might be open to more. Still, I knew better than to rush. My heart was raw and Eloise was healing from her own wounds. So we kept things light, focusing on supporting each other's emotional growth. Sometimes that meant sharing silly memes. Other times it meant discussing heavy therapy revelations. Through it all, an unexpected light began glowing in my once dark reality, Eloise's gentle presence reminding me that life could be more than heartbreak and revenge. Spring arrived in subtle hints, paler mornings, budding leaves, a softening of the bitter cold. My therapist, Dr. Elliott, suggested I celebrate small personal milestones. She thought I was making progress in releasing anger and forging a healthier sense of self. I still had nightmares about Clarissa's betrayal or her overdose, but they began tapering off. The days grew a bit brighter. It was during one of these milder weekends that Eloise invited me on what she called a healing retreat. She'd discovered a serene lakeside cabin owned by a friend of hers, Marcia, who was willing to lend it out for a few days. It's not fancy, Eloise warned, but it's quiet, no Wi-Fi, and near a forest trail. She said she wanted to step away from the city's noise, and she asked if I'd like to join, purely as friends seeking a calm environment. My initial reaction was hesitation. Spending a weekend alone with Eloise in a secluded cabin felt risky. I was still technically married, even if the divorce loomed over me, nearly final. But a second, deeper part of me craved that escape. The tension of the past months weighed heavily, and Eloise's presence was the only comfort I allowed myself. So I agreed, telling myself I'd keep it platonic. We headed out on a Friday afternoon. She drove, and I watched the urban scenery give way to rolling hills and occasional fields. We chatted about light topics, her part-time job at a community arts center, my cautious attempts at returning to martial arts. The sense of ease between us reassured me. If there was any underlying tension, it remained unspoken, floating just beneath the surface. The cabin was indeed modest, set against the backdrop of tall pines and a serene lake. We arrived at dusk, the sky streaked with oranges and purples. Marcia had left a basket of basic supplies on the porch, flashlights, extra blankets, and a note. Enjoy the quiet. Cell service is spotty. Eloise grinned, leading the way inside. That first night, we cooked a simple meal together, pasta and salad. With no TV or internet, we resorted to conversation and an old radio that crackled softly. Eloise lit a few candles, giving the tiny living room a cozy glow. I felt a knot in my chest loosen, realizing how long it had been since I simply relaxed in good company. After dinner, we sat on the small sofa, side by side. She brought out a battered deck of cards and challenged me to a game of rummy. We laughed at my rusty card skills. Over the course of an hour, our banter turned more personal. She asked if I'd heard from Oliver recently, and I told her about his slow but steady emotional recovery. I asked about her past heartbreak, but she only mentioned vague details of a toxic ex who'd undermined her confidence. Eventually, as the card game fizzled, an unspoken tension settled in. Eloise turned to me, eyes searching. "Logan," she said softly, "there's something I need to say, and I want you to promise not to freak out." My heart thudded. I nodded, bracing myself. She hesitated, fingers twisting in her lap. "We've known each other for a long time, right? Back in the day, I always had feelings for you. I never acted on them because you were with Clarissa, and I thought it was just a silly crush." Her cheeks flushed in the candlelight. "But these past weeks, reconnecting with you, I realize I never fully stopped caring." A swirl of emotion whipped through me, surprise, relief, maybe guilt. I swallowed. "Eloise, I don't know what to say." She held up a hand, stopping me. "I'm not expecting you to love me back right away, or anything dramatic. You're still healing from everything. I just needed you to know I care about you, more than just a friend." My pulse pounded. I glanced at our joined reflection in the cabin's window, seeing two weary people searching for solace. Part of me wanted to pull her into my arms. Another part warned that it was too soon, that I was too broken. "I feel something too," I admitted, voice low. "You're like a safe place in all this chaos. She smiled, tears brimming. If it's too much right now, I understand. I just don't want to hide how I feel. Leaning closer, I placed a hand gently on her cheek. My chest tightened with the weight of the moment, but also a surge of warmth. It's not too much. I just need time. My divorce isn't final, and I can't plunge into a new relationship without sorting myself out. Eloise nodded, lips curving in a tender smile. Time is okay. I'm not going anywhere. We ended the evening in a soft embrace, nothing more. I made sure to keep it chaste, mindful of the complicated lines I was treading. Still, that simple contact felt electric, stirring a sense of hope I hadn't allowed myself to feel in ages. As we drifted to separate rooms, she took the bedroom. I settled on the fold-out couch. I replayed her confession in my mind. Maybe it was possible to find new love after heartbreak, but I needed to proceed carefully, respecting both our vulnerabilities. The next day, we hiked a short trail that looped behind the cabin, marveling at early spring blooms peeking through patches of frost. She giggled when I slipped on a wet rock, and I teased her about her clumsy balancing act. It was so ordinary, yet so healing. During the quiet stretches, we'd walk side by side in comfortable silence, occasionally exchanging reassuring smiles. No heavy drama, just two people choosing to be present for each other. That night, sitting by the little wood-burning stove, Eloise asked if I had regrets about how I exposed Clarissa's affair. I admitted I did, particularly how it impacted Oliver, but also explained I couldn't see another way out. She listened without judgment. Then she gently laid her head on my shoulder, as if to say she understood the duality of my remorse and resolve. Later, as we both grew tired, she squeezed my hand. "Thank you for being honest with me." She paused, searching my eyes. And I meant what I said. I'm willing to wait for you to finalize everything before we even think about taking a bigger step. Emotion welled in my chest. "I appreciate that," I whispered. "I want to make sure we do this right, that it's not just a rebound from my misery." Eloise's gaze softened. "Logan, I'm not going anywhere. Heal at your pace. I'll be here." For the first time in a long while, my heart felt something resembling genuine peace. We ended the night much like the first, sharing a tentative hug that spoke volumes about unspoken possibilities. It wasn't a cinematic kiss, nor a rushed coupling, just two souls acknowledging that a new path might open once the past was settled. As I lay in the cabin's quiet darkness, I let out a slow breath. My marriage was still legally binding for now, my life still rife with unresolved emotions. But in Eloise's presence, I found a glimmer of hope, a whisper that maybe, after all the betrayal and revenge, there was room in my bruised heart for renewal. The knowledge warmed me like the gently crackling stove. April rolled into May, bringing longer daylight hours and a renewed sense of motion in my life. Dr. Elliott noted I appeared more at ease in our sessions. The guilt and anger that once consumed me had receded into a quieter corner of my psyche. Some days were still rough flashbacks of Clarissa's overdose or fleeting pangs of bitterness, but I no longer woke up seething or questioning my entire existence. The countdown to my divorce's final hearing loomed. Miss Dorsey, my attorney, stayed in steady contact, ensuring all the paperwork was in order. Clarissa, for her part, hadn't contested the at-fault grounds or the proposed settlement. Word was that she'd sold our old house to cover expenses and moved into a modest apartment near the outskirts of town. Cassandra mentioned she'd taken a low-key part-time job with an old acquaintance, likely needing the income after her workplace suspended her. One breezy morning, Miss Dorsey texted me, "Court date set for May 14th. Should be final if there are no complications." My chest tightened reading those words. The end of a 23-year marriage boiled down to a single date. It felt surreal, yet also freeing, like an anchor finally lifted from my feet. As the date approached, I visited Oliver and Dylan at Dylan's apartment. They'd invited me for pizza night, a welcome change from our stilted communications during the height of the scandal. The living room was small, cluttered with textbooks and video game controllers, but it felt alive with an energy I'd missed. Oliver greeted me with a brief hug, a gesture that warmed my heart. "Dad, you look less stressed," he observed, flopping onto a beanbag chair. "Therapy helping?" I nodded, smiling faintly. "Yeah, it's been good. I'm working through a lot of stuff. I glanced between him and Dylan. How about you two? Everything okay here? Dylan shrugged. We're managing. Oliver's focusing on finishing his junior year strong, and I'm still grinding at my part-time job while finishing college. He paused, then lowered his voice. We heard about Mom's move. Harriet mentioned she's still a mess, but stable. Oliver's gaze flickered with conflict. I haven't gone to see her, he admitted. I'm not ready. I don't hate her, but I can't pretend everything's fine. I sighed, feeling the weight of it all. No one can force you. Take the time you need. Another part of me felt a pang of guilt, remembering how my actions magnified Clarissa's downfall. But I reminded myself she'd made her choices, too. We chatted about lighter topics, Oliver's favorite band, Dylan's plan to propose a short trip with friends, sharing a few laughs over greasy pepperoni slices. I hadn't felt so close to them in ages. The tension that once strangled every conversation had lifted, leaving space for genuine connection. As the night wound down, I brought up the looming divorce date. So, May 14th, is it? I said, setting aside my plate. Miss Dorsey thinks it's straightforward. Clarissa retains the house money from the sale. I keep my personal accounts and assets. No spousal support, official at fault, then we're done. Oliver slouched, a twinge of sadness in his eyes. That's soon. I forced a small smile. Yeah, but it's time. Dylan pressed his lips together. I'm proud of you, Dad. You did what you had to. Doesn't make it any less painful, but I hope it gives you closure. I exhaled, nodding. I hope so, too. On the morning of the hearing, I dressed in a simple black blazer, feeling a knot in my stomach. I wasn't sure if Clarissa would appear, or if she'd let her attorney handle it alone. Miss Dorsey met me outside the courthouse, her professional smile steady. Don't worry, we've got this, she murmured. Inside the modest courtroom, the proceedings were quick and unemotional, a stark contrast to the raw devastation that led us here. Clarissa sat with her lawyer on the opposite bench, eyes downcast, looking frail. I caught her gaze once or twice, but we exchanged no words. The judge acknowledged the submitted evidence of adultery and neglect, along with Clarissa's lack of contest. Within minutes, he declared the divorce finalized, awarding Clarissa whatever remained from the house sale and removing spousal support obligations once she found stable employment. I kept my personal assets and savings. Just like that, over 2 decades of marriage ended with a gavel's soft thump. As we filed out, Miss Dorsey patted my shoulder. All done. You're free, she said, handing me a manila envelope of finalized documents. The hallway outside felt strangely silent. Clarissa lingered a few steps away, her posture hunched in a beige coat. For a moment, I thought she might approach me, but she hesitated, then turned and walked toward the exit, shoulders trembling. My chest tightened despite everything. The sight of her so defeated stirred a flicker of pity. Yet I stayed rooted, unwilling to break the new boundary. Once outside, I inhaled a shaky breath of fresh spring air. Miss Dorsey excused herself to handle final paperwork, leaving me alone on the courthouse steps. I clutched the envelope, a sense of weightlessness mingling with sorrow. It's over, officially. No more illusions or legal ties, just the aftermath of choices and consequences. I glanced around, half expecting Clarissa's parents to ambush me, but they were nowhere in sight. Instead, I spotted Cassandra across the street, waving tentatively. I walked over, and she hugged me gently. How do you feel? She asked, eyes full of concern. Relieved, I admitted, voice uneven. And sad. It's hard to describe. She nodded, understanding etched in her expression. We chatted briefly about next steps, what I planned to do with my free time, how I might continue therapy. Then she headed off to her own responsibilities, leaving me to drive back alone. I couldn't help reflecting on the irony that Clarissa now lived in a small, modest apartment, far from the life of comfort we once shared. Harriet had texted me the day before, saying Clarissa was barely holding it together, but at least she was no longer suicidal. My feelings toward her were complex: pity, anger, residual affection, and a fierce desire to move on. As I pulled away from the courthouse, I felt an odd sort of emptiness. My phone buzzed Eloise, checking in. I texted back a simple line. Divorce is final. I'm okay. Heading home. She replied with a heart emoji, and a promise to call later. A faint smile touched my lips, a promise of something new, perhaps. Later that afternoon, I arrived at my apartment. The sun filtered through the windows, illuminating the sparse living room. Setting the envelope of divorce papers on the coffee table, I sank onto the couch, letting out a long breath. Dr. Elliot had prepared me for this moment, warning that finalizing a divorce, even a long-expected one, can stir a whirlwind of emotion. I stayed there for a while, absorbing the enormity of it. Clarissa was no longer my wife, only the mother of my children, and a complex figure in my past. The bitterness I'd carried for so long felt lighter, as if the official severance freed me to step forward. Yes, the memories would remain, and so would the scars. But the legal and emotional tangle of our marriage was at last unraveled. Staring at the envelope, I quietly acknowledged a new chapter. For all the devastation, I had arrived at a place of relative calm, with therapy guiding me toward acceptance, Oliver and Dylan finding stability, and Eloise offering gentle friendship that might blossom into something more. For the first time since discovering Clarissa's betrayal, I felt a tentative stirring of optimism. I'm free to look ahead now, I thought. The hush of the apartment enveloped me, but it no longer felt suffocating. It felt like space to breathe, to dream, to rebuild. I closed my eyes, letting the moment settle into my bones. The divorce was final, but my life was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. When I finally got the keys to my new condo, a subtle thrill ran through me. It wasn't an extravagant place, a modest two-bedroom unit in a quiet neighborhood with a small balcony overlooking a tree-lined street. But it felt like a clean slate, untainted by the memories that haunted my old home. I'd spent weeks searching, weighing the pros and cons of living close to Dylan and Oliver, factoring in my job commute, and even ensuring there was space for a small home gym to keep my martial arts training alive. On the morning I moved in, the sky was a pale spring blue. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and freshly cut grass. My friend Reggie helped me unload boxes from the rented truck, cracking jokes about how I'd finally shed the last skin of marital baggage. I tried not to read too much symbolism into it, but part of me agreed this condo symbolized a fresh start. Eloise arrived around midday, carrying 2 bags of groceries and a small potted succulent. "Warming gift," she said with a shy smile, placing the plant on the kitchen windowsill. She wore her hair pinned back, a few stray curls framing her face. The warmth in her eyes was a reminder of how different my life had become since the divorce was finalized. There was no shadowy suspicion or half-hidden tension, just the quiet possibility that we might build something good in our own time. While Reggie lugged the heavier furniture upstairs, Eloise and I focused on the little things. Stacking dishes, finding spots for my well-worn martial arts gear, and labeling pantry items. Between tasks, we exchanged playful banter. She teased me about my minimal cooking supplies, a single frying pan, a battered saucepan. I admitted I'd thrown out a lot after leaving Clarissa. It felt cathartic at the time. Now I realized I needed basic household items again. Around noon, we broke for lunch. Eloise made grilled cheese sandwiches on my ancient skillet, the sizzling butter filling the kitchen with a comforting aroma. We ate on the bare living room floor, giggling at the mismatched plates. The sunlight streaming through the windows made the dust motes dance in the air. For a brief moment, I felt an almost childlike sense of wonder. Everything was humble, but it was mine, no secrets, no betrayals. That afternoon, Oliver texted me. "Heard you're moving in today. Mind if I swing by later?" My chest tightened with a surge of cautious hope. Ever since the divorce, Oliver had remained polite but somewhat distant, still processing the emotional fallout. The fact he wanted to visit voluntarily felt like a breakthrough. I texted back a quick, "Sure, door's open." When Oliver showed up, he seemed hesitant at first, looking around the half-unpacked condo with wide eyes. "It's nice, Dad," he said softly, hands in his pockets. Quiet. I nodded, offering him a seat on one of the new bar stools. Eloise gave him a friendly smile, then busied herself in the kitchen, giving us space. "Thanks for coming," I said. "I know it's not fully set up yet, but it's a start." Oliver shrugged, glancing around. "It's weird to see you living somewhere that doesn't have, Mom's stuff." I swallowed. Yeah, it's an adjustment. The mention of Clarissa stung a bit, though not as sharply as before. How are you holding up? How's therapy? A faint smile tugged at his lips. Better, actually. Dr. Chen's been helping me see that Mom's choices weren't my fault, and that your reaction, even though it was harsh, came from a place of hurt. I'm just trying to move forward. My shoulders relaxed slightly. I'm glad to hear it. If you ever need anything, I'm here. We talked about mundane topics, his final exams, a friend's birthday party, yet each word felt like bridging a gap that had divided us for months. Before he left, Oliver gave me a quick side hug, murmuring a simple, "Congrats on the new place." Eloise, witnessing from a slight distance, offered him a wave goodbye. I sensed her relief that Oliver was opening up to me again, forging a new sense of normalcy. After the day's frenzy of unpacking, Reggie headed out, leaving just Eloise and me in the condo's living room. Cardboard boxes lined the walls, waiting to be sorted, but for once I wasn't in a rush. We sat on the small couch, the one piece of furniture I'd splurged on, sipping bottles of water and catching our breath. "You did it," Eloise said softly, gesturing to the space. "Brand new start." A slow smile tugged at my mouth. "Feels surreal, but good. Like I can finally breathe without expecting the worst." She nodded, her gaze lingering on me with gentle empathy. "You deserve it. Just don't try to do everything at once, okay?" She teased, nudging my arm. "Pace yourself. I'll help you with the rest, but only if we can celebrate by ordering pizza tonight." I laughed at that, the sound echoing warmly in the uncluttered living room. "Deal. Pizza's on me." A flicker of gratitude filled my chest, recognizing how far I'd come. Just months ago, I was drowning in bitterness and secrecy. Now, I was forging a new life, uncertain but full of possibilities. That night, we shared a pepperoni pizza, talking late into the evening about trivial stuff, favorite childhood memories, goofy stories from college. At one point, I noticed how her laughter lit up her face, and a tender ache spread through my chest. This wasn't just a friend. I cared about her deeply, but I also remembered the promise we made. Take it slow. My divorce was still fresh, my heart still healing. She had her own scars, too. We would navigate this carefully, letting each day unfold. As the city lights dimmed outside and Eloise prepared to head home, she pressed her palm against mine in a brief, intimate gesture. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. My throat tightened with gratitude. In that moment, I felt the dawn of a genuine future, one not anchored by pain, but shaped by hope. Whether it led to a lasting partnership with Eloise or simply a stable life for me and my sons, I sensed that tomorrow held far more promise than the yesterdays I left behind. A few weeks later, the condo was starting to look more like a home. I'd hung up some framed prints, organized my martial arts corner with a small practice mat, and even replaced my battered saucepan with a modest set of kitchenware. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. I woke early for a light workout, tackled my job responsibilities, and spent evenings in therapy or catching up with the boys. One Saturday afternoon, Dylan and Oliver came by for a belated housewarming. Dylan's girlfriend, Sabrina, joined them. She was an upbeat college student with a knack for diffusing awkward moments. I'd met her a few times before, but this was the first time she saw my new place. We crowded in my living room, munching on chips and soda. Oliver lounged in a beanbag, Dylan and Sabrina shared the small couch, and I sat on a stool enjoying the cozy vibe. Midway through our snack session, Sabrina piped up, "So, is Eloise coming today?" Her friendly tone carried no malice, just genuine curiosity. I shrugged, trying to sound casual. "She might swing by later. She's volunteering at an arts workshop." Dylan exchanged a look with Oliver, something unspoken passing between them. I prepared for teasing, but instead Dylan cleared his throat. "Dad, we appreciate that you're taking your time with Eloise. Honestly, we can see she's good for you. You're calmer these days." Oliver nodded, glancing at me. "And hey, if I can handle all my therapy baggage, you deserve to have someone who, makes you happy." A rush of warmth spread in my chest. Their support meant more than I could articulate. "Thanks, guys," I said softly. "I'm not jumping into anything serious just yet, but I won't lie, she's become important to me." Sabrina smiled, passing the bowl of chips to Oliver. You both deserve some peace after all the drama. We ended up talking about more mundane topics: Dylan's job hunts after graduation, Oliver's upcoming senior year, Sabrina's ambition to start her own bakery someday. The normalcy felt precious. For the first time in a long while, the tension of broken trust and anger didn't dominate the conversation. We were simply a family, adjusting to new dynamics. Later, as we were wrapping up, Clarissa's parents, Charles and Patricia, unexpectedly called Oliver's phone. He shot me a quick look before stepping onto the balcony to answer. I felt a slight tightening in my gut, remembering how they'd pushed me to visit Clarissa in the hospital months ago. We hadn't spoken since. When Oliver returned, he wore a conflicted expression. "Grandma and Grandpa wanted me to pass a message," he said slowly. "They want to see you. They apparently realized they were a bit harsh last time pushing you to see Mom, and they want to apologize." I rubbed my temples, the memory of that phone call from them still fresh. I'd refused to see Clarissa after her suicide attempt, and her parents had been caught in the middle. "How do you feel about that?" I asked Oliver, genuinely curious. He shrugged. "I think they've realized pressuring you wasn't fair. They said they'd respect your boundaries, but they'd like to see you maybe just for coffee or something." Dylan nodded. "They must have mellowed out after seeing how badly everything collapsed for Mom. They probably blame themselves for not stepping in sooner." I sighed, glancing at the floor. "I'll consider it," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "I'm not angry at them. They were just trying to protect their daughter, but it's been complicated." I didn't elaborate, but Dylan and Oliver understood. Compassion for Clarissa's parents was tangled with memories of betrayal and heartbreak. A few days later, I arranged to meet Charles and Patricia at a small cafe near their neighborhood. The place had an old-fashioned interior, all wooden booths and yellowish lights. I spotted them sitting together, looking older and wearier than I remembered. Patricia's eyes flickered with relief when she saw me approach. "Logan," she said in a quavering voice, rising to offer a tentative hug. Charles nodded, his posture stiff. We settled into the booth, an awkward hush stretching between us. Finally, Patricia spoke. "We owe you an apology." I sipped my coffee, letting her continue. She explained how they had misjudged the situation after Clarissa's overdose, assuming I should rush to her side, ignoring the pain she'd inflicted on me. Charles added that they'd been blinded by paternal instinct, trying to salvage their daughter's life without respecting my boundaries. I listened, my mind drifting to the many Christmases and birthdays we'd shared. For 2 decades, they were like a second set of parents to me. Then Clarissa's affair cracked everything, turning us into strangers on opposite sides. "I appreciate you saying this," I said quietly. "I never wanted to shut you out completely, but I couldn't keep letting Clarissa's crisis overshadow what she did." Patricia's eyes glistened with tears. "We understand. She's in therapy now, still not fully well, but better than before. She regrets so much, but it's her journey to handle. We hope you can forgive us for how we acted." My chest tightened. Forgiveness. That word had loomed in my life for months, tangled with resentment. "I won't pretend it didn't hurt," I admitted. "But I also get that you were trying to save your daughter. If Oliver and Dylan are okay with it, I'm open to staying in contact with you." Charles let out a shaky breath, relief plain on his face. "Thank you," he murmured. "We'll respect your space regarding Clarissa. We just don't want to lose you or the boys entirely." A tentative warmth spread through me. We chatted briefly about Oliver's school progress, Dylan's job hunt, and Sabrina's cheerful presence. Although the conversation held a hint of lingering sadness, it also carried a sense of closure. We weren't best friends again overnight, but the door wasn't slammed shut either. They apologized again, promising to respect my boundaries regarding Clarissa. I left the cafe feeling a weight lifted, as though I'd reclaimed a piece of my extended family that had been lost in the chaos. That evening, back at my condo, I paced the living room, sorting through swirling emotions. I texted Oliver that I'd met his grandparents and it went okay. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a simple "thanks, Dad." It wasn't a grand resolution, but it was something. When Eloise called later, I recounted the meeting with Charles and Patricia. "I'm glad they're making amends," she said gently. It shows they care about Oliver and Dylan's future, too. Yeah, I sighed, leaning against the kitchen counter. Maybe we can mend the extended family ties over time. She encouraged me to celebrate small wins like I'd been doing in therapy. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, and eventually we said goodnight. After hanging up, I noticed how my chest felt less constricted. The threads of family, once torn, were stitching themselves back together, if only in a delicate pattern. The old life I'd shared with Clarissa was gone, but the ties to Oliver, Dylan, and yes, even Clarissa's parents remained. I recognized I could either embrace that tenuous bond or let it shrivel in bitterness. I chose to embrace it, carefully, acknowledging that healing doesn't always come in neat packages. As I turned off the lights and headed to my bedroom, I replayed Patricia's tearful apology, Charles's trembling voice. They had lost a son-in-law in the same breath that Clarissa lost her marriage. The fact we could still meet and talk felt like a testament to the resilience of human connections, even after betrayal. I breathed deep, setting my phone aside. The condo was silent, but not lonely. In that hush, I felt the faint hum of renewal, the sense that broken threads could be woven into something new if we gave it time. I was in the middle of a quiet Saturday afternoon, a day I'd planned to spend reading, maybe practicing a few martial arts forms on my apartment's mat when my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but a strange intuition nudged me to pick up. A hesitant male voice crackled through the speaker. "Logan? Hey, it's Kieran." My stomach jolted, an immediate surge of old anger and revulsion. He'd tried contacting me months ago, back when everything collapsed, but I blocked him. Now apparently he had a new number. My first instinct was to hang up. Instead, I took a breath, holding the phone tighter. "What do you want?" I asked, voice cold. He sighed. I don't expect sympathy, but I need to say something. I'm homeless, basically. My folks kicked me out for wrecking your marriage. I lost my job, can't get a decent reference." His words trailed off, thick with desperation. "Listen, man, I know I deserve it, but I'm asking, can we meet? Just so I can try to apologize in person. Clear the air?" My pulse hammered. The nerve of him, calling me after everything he'd done. Yet a small voice in my head, possibly influenced by therapy, suggested that hearing him out might offer closure. "Why would I want to see you?" I retorted. "Because this guilt is killing me," he said weakly, "and because I'm hoping somehow you'll find it in you to let me apologize properly." I exhaled, shutting my eyes. I could end the call right then. But after all the therapy sessions focusing on acceptance and letting go, maybe confronting him was the final step. "Fine," I said, surprising even myself. "Tomorrow afternoon, meet me at Crystal Park, by the fountain. 1 o'clock. Don't be late." His breath hitched. "Thank you," he whispered, sounding genuinely relieved. I ended the call without replying, my heart thudded with a storm of emotions, revulsion, curiosity, a twisted sense of pity. Why am I doing this, I wondered, but I already knew. If I wanted to truly move forward, I couldn't keep Kieran as some faceless villain in my mind. The next day, I arrived at Crystal Park early, claiming a bench near the chipped stone fountain that trickled water. The sky was gray, and a chilly breeze rustled the budding branches of oak trees overhead. I wore a simple jacket, not bothering to dress up. If Kieran tried anything manipulative, I'd walk away. He showed up 10 minutes later, eyes darting nervously around the park. He looked thinner, a far cry from the cocky younger man I'd seen in those social media photos with Clarissa. A worn backpack hung off his shoulder. The lines under his eyes spoke of restless nights. I stood crossing my arms. "You have 5 minutes," I said tersely. Kieran swallowed, nodding. "Thank you for this. I am sorry for everything, Logan. I know I messed up your life, your marriage. I fell for Clarissa, and we didn't think it through. It was selfish and wrong." The anger in my chest flared. "Wrong?" I echoed. "That's putting it mildly. You helped her destroy a 23-year marriage, humiliated me publicly, and nearly tore my family apart." He flinched, dropping his gaze. "I know. I accept the blame. I just didn't realize how serious it was until you sent that binder to my parents, to HR. Suddenly, everything was gone, my job, my home, my mom's support. I'm not saying I didn't deserve it, but I'm at rock bottom. And Clarissa, well, she's not exactly in a position to help me now." A humorless laugh escaped me. You're telling me she's still in therapy, scraping by in a small apartment. You two shattered everything for each other, and now you're both paying the price. He hesitated, fiddling with his backpack straps. I just wanted you to know I regret it. Genuinely. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it to your face. I'm sorry. My throat tightened. For months I'd fantasized about telling him off, maybe even punching him. But seeing him trembling with regret, living out of a backpack, battered by his own choices, stirred conflicting feelings. Had my revenge been too thorough? Dr. Eliot's words floated in my mind. Sometimes letting go means acknowledging your own capacity for harm, too. You got what you deserved, I said, voice steady. But I'm not the type to enjoy seeing someone homeless. I paused, scanning his weary expression. What do you want from me exactly? Money? A place to crash? Because I'm not offering either. He shook his head. No, I'm not asking for that. I just wanted to face you, tell you how sorry I am. Maybe get your forgiveness if that's not too much. A bitter knot twisted in my gut. Could I truly forgive him? Did I even want to? My mind flickered back to Oliver, who told me he was learning to let go of resentment in therapy. I'm not sure I can give you complete forgiveness, I said slowly. But I can let go of the hate. That's something I'm learning to do for my own peace. Kieran's eyes welled with emotion. Thank you, he murmured. That means more than you know. We stood there in silence, the fountain's gentle trickle filling the pause. A light gust ruffled my hair. I recalled the countless nights I'd read Clarissa's messages to him, how I'd burned with rage. That fury had fueled my cunning plan, leaving him unemployed and disgraced. Now all that remained was a battered young man and a middle-aged ex-husband trying to mend his own spirit. I cleared my throat. Look, I hope you figure out your life. There's an outreach center on Grove Street that helps people with job placements and short-term housing. Check them out if you haven't already. A shaky nod from him. I will. And again, I'm sorry. He paused as though waiting for me to hurl insults, but I just stared at him. After a beat, he hoisted his backpack and turned, walking away with slumped shoulders. I remained by the fountain, heart pounding. My fists itched with residual anger, but beneath that, a strange relief unfolded. I'd faced Kieran, the man who contributed to my marital destruction, and found I no longer yearned for revenge or retribution. I wanted distance, closure, and a chance to be free from that well of hatred. Releasing a shaky breath, I turned toward the exit. My phone buzzed, Eloise texting. How are you doing today? Without giving details, I typed back, just had a big talk. I'm okay. We'll call you soon. A gentle breeze lifted the corners of my jacket, as if urging me forward. I couldn't rewrite the past, but maybe, just maybe, I could shape a future absent of festering resentment. As I headed home, I realized that meeting with Kieran had been one last test, a test of whether I'd sink back into darkness or truly commit to my own healing. I chose healing. Maybe letting go isn't about excusing what he did, I thought, but accepting that vengeance won't rebuild what was lost. In that recognition, I felt a measure of unexpected peace, as though the final chord of a sorrowful symphony had been struck. All that remained was to move on with my life, one slow, steady step at a time. Late spring brought a soft warmth to the air, and a gentle breeze made the leaves outside my condo shimmer. It was almost exactly a year since I'd first confronted Clarissa about her suspicious behavior, an anniversary of sorts, though I tried not to dwell on it. Instead, I found myself thinking of the present, my relationship with Oliver and Dylan, my evolving bond with Eloise, and my acceptance of the past. Oliver's therapy had gone well over the past months, and it showed in his demeanor. Where once he'd been guarded and angry, he now carried himself with cautious optimism. He'd taken to journaling, a habit he said helped him sort his thoughts much like Dr. Eliot had encouraged me. Dylan, meanwhile, was steadily forging a new life with Sabrina, balancing work and the pursuit of graduate school. My son seemed on stable ground, a relief that helped me sleep better at night. One sunny weekend, Oliver came to my condo with a new sense of purpose in his eyes. He'd requested to talk privately, so we sat at my small kitchen table, sipping iced tea. "Dad," he began, voice steady, "I wanted to let you know I'm proud of you. I know it was messy, how everything went down with Mom. But we survived. I'm feeling more at peace, and a lot of that is because you finally stood up for yourself. My throat tightened with emotion. I never wanted to hurt you or your brother, but... He shook his head, cutting me off gently. I know, and I won't say it didn't hurt, but we're moving forward, right? He gave me a small smile. So, thank you for trying your best. In that moment, I saw glimpses of the little boy who once clung to my leg, believing I could fix anything. Life had changed so drastically, yet the bond between father and son endured. I reached over to squeeze his hand. I love you, kiddo. Don't ever forget that. He grinned. Love you too, Dad. That evening, Eloise came by for a casual dinner. We'd grown comfortable spending time at my condo, sometimes cooking together, other times simply relaxing with a movie. Tonight, I lit a couple of candles in the living room, a subtle way of acknowledging that our relationship was shifting beyond mere friendship. The divorce was final, my guilt lessened. We were forging something real, step by cautious step. Over plates of stir-fry, Eloise asked about Oliver's visit. I told her how he'd expressed pride in me, and she smiled, eyes gleaming. That's huge, Logan. You've come so far. I licked my lips, a wave of gratitude swelling. I couldn't have done it without therapy, and honestly, without you. You've been a steady light through all this. A soft blush crept over her cheeks. I'm glad I could help. You've helped me too. Given me hope that heartbreak doesn't define the rest of our lives. After dinner, we sat on my modest balcony, the night air filled with the scent of blossoming flowers. Eloise rested her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped an arm around her waist. We watched the city lights flicker below like distant stars. The hum of passing cars lulled me into a rare, peaceful state. Gone were the days of suspicion, fury, and heartbreak. In their place was quiet contentment. Before heading home, Eloise turned to me, eyes searching. Logan, could you see us making something more permanent? Eventually? Her voice trembled slightly. A tender ache spread through my chest. I touched her cheek lightly. I can, yes. I don't want to rush, but I see a future with you if you're willing to take it one day at a time. She nodded, relief shining in her eyes. We exchanged a gentle kiss, simple, respectful, yet imbued with a warmth I'd missed for so long. After she left, I sat on my couch, heart thrumming with the realization that I was no longer just a vengeful ex-husband. I was a man stepping into a new life, guided by compassion and self-awareness. A week later, Oliver showed signs of real progress in therapy. He mentioned wanting to see Clarissa eventually, to talk about the residual anger he held. Dylan supported his brother, though he himself wasn't ready for such a meeting. Watching them navigate these choices filled me with cautious pride. We each had our own path to walk, healing on different timelines. Meanwhile, I quietly shopped for a small ring. Not for a wedding, Eloise and I weren't there yet, but a simple band to symbolize commitment if she wanted it. Miss Dorsey's final lines about the divorce months ago rang in my head. You're free now. And indeed, I felt free to chart my own course, no longer shackled by Clarissa's betrayal or my all-consuming revenge. Eloise had shown me that love could bloom again, but only if nurtured with honesty and mutual respect. One sunny afternoon, I orchestrated a low-key gathering at my condo. Oliver, Dylan, Sabrina, and Eloise. We ordered pizza, our unofficial tradition, and played some board games, the living room filled with laughter and mild trash talk. As we wound down, Dylan's phone pinged. He glanced at it, then eyed me cautiously. Dad, he said, Clarissa's parents want to stop by. They're in the area. They said it's urgent. A flicker of worry shot through me. Urgent about what? He shrugged. No idea. They just said they want to speak to you. The room fell silent, tension creeping in. Oliver exchanged glances with Sabrina. Eloise rested a reassuring hand on my arm. Though a swirl of unease fluttered in my gut, I exhaled slowly. I'm not the same man I was before. Okay, I said. Have them come up. Let's see what's going on. 10 minutes later, Charles and Patricia arrived, slightly out of breath from climbing the stairs. Their expressions were grim. My mind jumped to worst-case scenarios. Was Clarissa hurt again? But Charles's first words calmed me. Clarissa's fine, he said. She's still stable and continuing therapy. Patricia stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the group. We're not here to upset you, but we wanted to apologize face-to-face for pressuring you again. We heard from Harriet that you might be building a life with someone new. She glanced at Eloise, offering a faint smile. We just want you to know we respect that. I looked at Eloise, who gave them a polite nod. Thank you, I said softly. I'm glad Clarissa's doing better. Charles cleared his throat, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small envelope, handing it to me. It's a letter from Clarissa, he murmured. We promised to deliver it. She hopes you'll read it. That's all. My heart clenched. Another letter from Clarissa? Part of me wanted to tear it up, but I'd come too far to let anger rule me. I accepted the envelope, nodding. I'll read it, I said, my voice measured. No promises beyond that, though. Charles and Patricia left soon after, tension clinging to the air. Oliver and Dylan decided to head out too, giving me space. Sabrina followed them, leaving just Eloise and me in the quiet living room. I stared at the envelope, uncertain. Do I really want to open this? Eloise placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Whatever you decide, I'm here, she said. Her voice carried an empathy that soothed my racing thoughts. I set the envelope aside, exhaling. I'll read it eventually, but not tonight. Tonight is for us. She smiled, relief passing through her eyes. Agreed. Let's not let the past overshadow the present. We spent the evening calmly, drifting back to the board games. Each time my gaze flickered to that envelope, I reminded myself that life was no longer consumed by Clarissa's shadow. I had choices now whether to read her words, whether to respond, how to define my future with Eloise. The revelations of the last year had taught me that healing doesn't come in one grand gesture. It comes in small, deliberate steps, shared with those who stand by you. Eventually, Eloise and I ended the night on my balcony again, the city lights painting faint glows in the distance. I wrapped an arm around her waist, feeling content, even with the letter from Clarissa waiting in the other room. I'm forging a new story now, I thought, remembering how near I'd come to letting bitterness consume me forever. This was the future I chose, standing side by side with the people who mattered, letting love and acceptance guide me forward. The pain and betrayal had shaped me, but they no longer defined me.